I discovered my So of 3 years was texting back and forth with another person every day and was sending nude photos to each other. A little bit of backstory. SO and I have been together for 4 years, and about 2 years ago when the Rona hit, I moved in with him as we both lost our respective jobs and needed to save a bit from gas and utilities. Since then I have found a new office job and So takes some odd jobs online, but he basically stays at home most of the time. So has always been on the controlling side. He wanted me to cut all my male friends from my life. Hindsight is 20/20ths, I know, but in his defense, he also cut all contacts with women, or at least to my knowledge. So has always been very adamant that he doesn't condone cheating, and even if someone else in his life was a cheater, he would cut them out of his life. The relationship has had its ups and downs. We have had a fair share of arguments, and a few months ago we hit a rough patch, but recently things were looking okay for a while. Or so I thought. So has become quite guarded with his phone lately, including hiding it if I look over his shoulder. He has never done this before, and it's very not like him. I am very open with my personal tech items. He's always welcome to look through my phone and laptop because I have nothing to hide. We even know each other's phone passwords. My gut feeling kept telling me that something was wrong, so when I got up for work this morning while he was still sleeping, I admit, I shouldn't have done what I did. I took his phone from the nightstand and checked out his conversations. So has been chatting with a girl he met online, 25. I only skimmed through the last few messages as I didn't want him to wake up and catch me snooping, but they have been texting back and forth every day while I was at work and sending each other nudes. I was so shaken and disgusted. I don't know when it all started, but I assume it's been at least a month because that's when I first noticed the suspicious phone guarding behavior. Honestly, no matter how much I look for a solution, there's no coming back from this. I know I have to leave. I haven't confronted him yet because I don't want him to try and persuade me to stay or spin it that it's my fault. I also don't believe in closure, so there's really no use in telling him that I know. Here's where I need advice. I have a place to move to and I have to move all my stuff. I don't want to have him damage my stuff to spite me or something. He has a history of throwing my possessions when angry, so I'll have people come help me move when he's not in the house. We have separate finances, so that's not an issue. The problem is, we have a dog. I adopted him with his approval when I moved in with him. I'm saying it's technically my dog since I do 90% of the dog activities. He rarely takes him out and I buy all the dog toys and dog food. Basically, he's the fun parent that gets only the pets and hugs. I know he loves the dog and the dog loves him, but I don't think he'd be able to take care of him and get up at 6 a.m. to walk him. My baby is also too used to the house and us, and he'll probably be stressed out if I move him. Should I take the dog with me without telling my soon-to-be ex, or should I leave the dog with him? Another thing I need advice for is, should I leave him a note or a message with any explanation? Update 1. First, I'd like to thank everyone who commented on my previous post. It really helped put things in perspective for me. A few people asked for an update. It will be a lengthy one, so brace yourselves. One particular comment stuck out to me, that my pet doesn't know what's best for them and they could roll in literal shit and be happy, which really solidified my decision. As a preface, I'd like to apologize. I was paranoid that I could be found out, so I altered a couple of details in the original, one of which was that we owned a cat, not a dog. However, I was still doing 90% of the caring for the cat. On to the update. After reading all the comments and making the decision to take the cat, I called my best friend, her boyfriend and my parents to tell them I'm breaking up and discuss logistics. I also told them to not mention anything in writing on the off chances that SO sees the messages. It took me quite some time to put everything in motion, 3 weeks to be precise, in which time I was doing my best to act like everything was okay while secretly moving some of my stuff to my parents' place to ease the final load. Finally, last Friday morning, my best friend, her boyfriend and my dad came. We loaded up everything on my father's truck and left. The whole ordeal took 1.5 HRS. I was honestly amazed how much stuff I managed to accumulate for just 2 years. I took everything that I paid for out of my pocket, including a monitor and a headset that I lent him due to his equipment breaking, and he never bought new ones. The only thing I left was a queen-size bed I bought shortly after moving in. I also made sure to log into X's World of Warcraft account to cancel his subscription, which was paid from my bank account. I left a note on his desk that basically said, "Do not panic, you have not been robbed." I just took all my stuff and left. I'm taking the cat with me because I don't trust you to take care of her properly. Do not call me, my friends or my family. We have already had the talk, so there's nothing else to say. Have a nice life, your ex. I didn't tell him I knew about the cheating because at this point it was irrelevant. In retrospect, it was just the last straw on top of many other problems. But hindsight is always 20/20ths. I blocked his number and never looked back. Sure enough, he messaged me on WhatsApp as soon as he came back to the empty flat. The gist of the messages was that we could have done it the Civil War, LMAO, and why did I take the cat this way? We raised her together and he loved her. He also tried to call 3 times but gave up soon after. I then blocked him on WhatsApp as well. The next few days were pretty uneventful. Yesterday, he showed up at my workplace unannounced. I was pretty annoyed but didn't want to make a scene in front of the colleges, so I took a break and went out with him to the park across the street. Knowing him, he wouldn't just fuck off and leave me alone. He said he wanted closure and that I owed it to him after all these years. The conversation was mostly boring, so I'll highlight the important details. He said he wanted my monitor back and that he's willing to pay for it or trade me his new one, which is better, but wasn't with the same curve that he was used to. I told him that I like my monitor and tough luck. The best part is he went out, bought a new monitor, set it up to play WoW, but realized that I also took the headset. He then asked his mother to buy him one and she bought headphones without a mic. Pity. He asked to have the cat back. He offered me money, offered me all his crypto savings, and even offered me 60k gold in WoW LMAO. I told him some things can't be bought with money. He then asked to co-parent, and when I said no to that too, he asked to at least say goodbye to her in person, also denied. I brought up that I'm the cat's primary caregiver and he can't even clean her shit. He replied he could, when push comes to shove, but didn't since I was doing those things anyway, despite him being in the flat almost 24/7. I also pointed out that if he really loved the cat that much, he'd want the best for her and to be with the one who takes care of her, instead of wanting to keep her for selfish reasons. He kind of agreed on that. The most baffling part, he offered to pay me to go grocery shopping together. We used to do that all the time when we were together. I pointed him to a couple of sites where he can buy groceries and have them delivered. He said it was too much work. I told him to adjust and evolve. He also apologized one too many times for hurting me, to which I replied every time I wasn't hurt, I was just disgusted and cringed at the conversations I read, to which he got offended and mumbled that it was private, you know. Not once did he mention the side chick, even then he didn't have the balls to admit to the affair. In their messages there was a recurring joke that if he comes to the hotel where she works, they'd have to fuck in the janitor's room. I brought her up a couple of times, told him I wish them both the very best, and since I left him the bed, he doesn't have to worry about fucking in the janitor's room anymore. He asked to be friends multiple times. I told him, also multiple times, he betrayed me and he's a pathological liar and I don't want to be friends with a dishonest person. He legit couldn't comprehend how his dishonesty impacts a potential friendship. He said he wanted to tell me he wasn't committed to me anymore but couldn't bring himself to do that. I pointed out the hypocrisy of him blowing up at me for platonically talking to male friends online, but he cheats the moment a semi-attractive woman comes his way. He said that a woman cheating on a man is the greatest sin, but a man cheating on a woman is not so severe. What the actual fuck? The rest of the conversation was him trying to play buddy-buddy and talk to me about his life and me reminding him that I'm not interested in his life and that he's a closed chapter to me. After what seemed to be eternity, we said our, hopefully, final goodbyes and I went back to work. In conclusion, for the past week since I left, I've felt like a huge load have dropped off my shoulders. I have all the time in the world, I'm working on myself, I'm reconnecting with people I haven't talked to in years. I'm trying to live my best life and I don't regret anything. There were good times, there were bad times. It was a valuable experience and a lesson learned what to look for in a partner and, more importantly, what not to overlook. Huge thanks to everyone that commented on my post. You really gave me the push I needed to make what I hope is the right decision. Update 2. I was contemplating whether to write this last update or not. A bunch of things have happened since I last posted and eventually, I figured we are all more or less people who laugh at their own farts and enjoy the occasional justice boner, so I decided y'all might appreciate how karma has caught up with X. Disclaimer and some background. I left out a lot of information in the original post and altered a lot of details to make sure X does not find the post and connect the dots. Our real ages are 28, him, 33, me, and 34, side chick. X and I were together for almost 7 years. Note 4. X had a chronic disease, nothing fatal if treated, very manageable, and a lot of people with the condition can work. He was of course using it as an excuse not to work, even online work, and mooch off me. We lived with his mother who was supporting his narrative that he is too sick to work. X was abusive, first only verbally but it progressed to physical abuse. I omitted most of this information in the first post because I wanted an unbiased opinion whether to take the cat or not. Even though the cheating was the last nail in the coffin of our relationship, I was actually contemplating leaving him for almost a year before the actual fact and on occasions where he ramped up the abuse. I will withhold giving examples for the time being because the topic might be traumatic for some readers. My last update ended with my ex coming to work to offer me pixel money for my cat. This was in August 2022. I vacated his flat at the end of July. I thought everything was said and done and I would not hear from him again. Spoiler, I was wrong. Since the breakup he has messaged me about every 3 months on Discord for various bullshit, like how he lost his best friend or asking for photos of the cat. I didn't block him there in case either of us needed to exchange items we forgot at our respective places. Sometime in March I found out by chance that he's still using my old League account. He has been banned on 3 different accounts for toxicity. I gave him the password while we were dating, but I did not think he would have the audacity to continue using it after we broke up. The kicker is, all it would take would be to ask me to use it and I would have no problems with it. It really rubbed me the wrong way that he could message me with his woe is me crap on 4 different occasions but conveniently forgot to mention that he is still playing on my account. I wondered for about a week whether to let it slide or to just change the password, then he contacted me again about wanting to ask me something. I shot this down and reminded him that I explicitly told him not to contact me. He said okay. This lasted for a fortnight until he messaged me again, saying that he will ask his question regardless. I pointed out how I told him not to contact me and he could not respect even that. So he has learned nothing as he still does not give a fuck about other people's boundaries. The question was, what did it feel like to be with a complete monster for 7 years? Why did you stay for so long? Apparently the lad was going through some kind of epiphany phase. There were a lot of crocodile tear-laced explanations that followed. The gist of it was that he was doing some reflections. He realized he is a complete lunatic and needs help and apologized for how he behaved. I also found out that he spent all his savings and disability money, including the crypto he offered me for the cat. So he could not take me up on the offer to buy my LOL account. Sag. Also, to nobody's surprise, his little affair did not work out. I did not ask for details, but what he said was, I think I finally met a person who is more sick and broken inside than me, which is quite an achievement. Few months prior to this revelation, a WoW friend from the side chicks country messaged me. For context, we are all Europeans and play on the same servers. Friend knew my side of the story, and when he found out that side chick is flying to my and ex's country, he put 2 and 2 together. He told me he does not expect much from their relationship since a year ago the chick was dating a mate of his, broke his heart and flew somewhere else for the next WoW guy that gave her attention. Knowing these facts, and after what my ex said, I mentioned to him how it was ironic that he cried cheating if I was 5 minutes late after work, but decided to involve himself with a woman who was practicing cheating as a sport. He agreed that it was quite ironic indeed and that he had to lay in the bed that he made, which was sort of mature on his part, I suppose. Also, did I mention he was too dumb to wire his own debit card to his WoW account? This is why he could not play anymore. Well, yeah, but I guess also because he lost his sugar mommy that was paying for it and failed to secure another. As for me, Kitty and I are thriving. I am active. I lost 12 kilograms since the breakup and I'm getting back in shape, even though I lost the excess weight the moment I dumped the ex. I have reconnected with most of my friends and apologized for not contacting them very much in the past 7 years and explained why. They were very understanding and things have gone very much to how they were before. I have also met the most decent, kind and compassionate man out there. So, life is looking good. Thank you for all the support, Reddit. Thank you for reading and have a great day. I found out that my mother and my fiancé had been having sex for the past few years, leading up to the birth of my younger brother. My fiancé, 25, and myself, 24, have been together since we were 17-18 years old. Honestly, he was always kind, handsome, funny, and everyone used to say I was so lucky to have the whole package. I felt so lucky too. He always treated me with love and respect, so this makes everything just so shocking for me. I have always had a good relationship with my mom. It has always been her and I against the world. My dad died in an accident when I was little. We always joke that we are the real-life Rory and Lorelai from Gilmore Girls. My mom dated guys on and off and they were usually cool but nothing really past the early stages. Around 4 years ago my mom told me she was pregnant, which was a huge surprise. My mom was around 42 years old and although she was sort of dating someone recently, didn't meet the guy but knew she went on dates, it still was a big shock. She never thought she could be pregnant at her age. She had me when she was super young, an oopsie, and I can tell she was stressed and worried. I decided to support her, since she has always supported me and tried to reassure her. She then had my brother who is now 3 years old. I have a close relationship with my brother. I have helped take care of him since he was born and I just love the little guy. My fiancé was also always helpful with my brother. We would take him out for ice cream, playground, pool time during summer, etc. But nothing was weird. He was just my then BF spending time with my brother and I. Now to how I found out. My fiancé and I have been living together since we finished college. He was not at home because he was hanging out with friends, but I stayed home because I didn't feel like going out and just wanted to relax on the sofa. At some point during binge watching a series on Netflix, my laptop died, and I was too lazy to get my charger, so I used my fiancé's iPad instead. I know the password but had never used it before. The iPad logged in, and I received a bunch of message notifications. I guess he hasn't used it in a while either. Anyway, this got my attention, and I went to check it out, and of course, I found everything. My mom's number wasn't saved under her name, but I recognized it and verified it with my phone. She was telling him she felt guilty and that I should know. He said he also felt guilty but couldn't lose me and that they messed it up. She said it was unfair for my brother to never know his dad and asked if he could live having his son around, not behaving like a dad but as a brother-in-law. I broke down. What the actual F? There weren't a lot of older messages, just some photos stored of my brother as a newborn, my mom pregnant, and more photos of my brother growing up in an album. I couldn't anymore. I cried for what seemed like ages and I waited for my BF to come back home. I wish I was one of those women that can pretend and get things together before confronting the cheater, but I can't. He came back later that night, around 23:30, and I just gave him the iPad with the conversation opened and saw his face completely go pale. I asked for an explanation. When? How? Why? And he didn't want to at first, but knew he had to. Apparently a few years back while I was traveling with some friends, girls trip, my fiance and mom had dinner together. This isn't strange since he has been part of the family for so long. Sometimes mom and fiance would eat together at our place even if I was busy with sports or out. I did the same with his parents. Somehow, unclear how since he couldn't explain it well, one thing led to another and they ended up sleeping together. They felt guilty but apparently not guilty enough. BC they slept together 2-3 more times, using the excuse of meeting up to discuss how to tell me. Apparently when my mom got pregnant they stopped sleeping together and decided to not tell me, since my fiance loved me and couldn't lose me, and my mom didn't want to lose her daughter. So here we are now, with two of the most disgusting humans. I obviously broke the engagement, told my mom to never talk to me again and move in with a friend. I feel bad for my brother since I really love him, but I can't be around him now, I just can't. I feel like it would remind me of all those times we talked about having kids. I would be his baby mama, only baby mama. We talked about this future since we were 17 years old, so I want to puke every time I think how I was actually taking care of his child with someone else, while still having those dreams. I want to puke. Editor's note. Comments were mostly supportive, with a few telling their own stories of cutting parents off and a couple with tales of spouses sleeping with parents. How is this even a thing? People are crazy. Update 1, to the update. As I was afraid, I was indeed confronted near my office this week. I knew this was coming but thought maybe I had more time. My ex was the person to come find me. Yesterday, Wednesday, after finishing work and walking to where my car was parked, my ex was sort of lingering, waiting around. I thought about running. Not gonna lie, but I guess in the moment I felt strong enough to get over it, instead of having that hanging above my head waiting to be approached again. He asked if we could talk and I said yes, but I didn't feel like having that conversation over coffee like we were old friends. It felt ridiculous, so I told him to just talk right there. We were in the streets but somehow it wasn't crowded, but also not completely lonely. Felt right. He basically said sorry 100 times and that I deserved better. I agreed. He said he did love me and that he still does, but he would understand why I wouldn't want anything to do with him. He said that if I did in fact consider giving him a chance that he would go to therapy, alone or together or both, and that he would work hard to win my trust back. I told him it wasn't possible. There was too much damage. This sounds calm when I type it, but in the moment things came out more with louder tone and harsher words. Anyways, he did say that he is in the or will be, it was a bit of a blur, process of getting custody, partly, from my brother, and that he in fact does want to be a dad to him. He said he does not want to be together with my mom, that it was just a stupid mistake. Sure, BC 5 times is just a random thing. He couldn't explain why he did it in the first place. I think he doesn't even know himself. I asked if he cheated with someone else before. He said no, not sure if to believe it, but he sounded honest. I asked why he didn't come clean, and he said that after he did the deed he always felt panicked and it hit him that he could lose me and he just didn't want to. I told him it was meant to be found out, that what was his plan? To have my brother around and ignore their relationship forever? He said he didn't think far enough and that he was basically going with the idea one day at the time. I asked him if he felt that my mom seduced him. He said it was mutual, which made me want to puke again. I asked if he has had any contact with my mom since I found out. He said yes, but mostly about my brother, didn't elaborate more, and I didn't press for more info on that. He said he told his parents the day before, or the day before that, not sure, Tuesday, about everything. The parents were not happy, but they are glad to start building a relationship with my brother, their grandkid. Honestly, all of this felt like a punch in my stomach. I don't know why. The parents wanted to contact me, but he told them to wait till he approached me first, hence why he was here. I said if he started or thought about the custody before I found out, and he said no, but when I found out was like the push he needed. Great. Seems I helped him get his shit together. And this past week he was arranging all of that mess. That's why he hasn't tried to see me before. He sounded and looked defeated, but the whole thing made me, besides sad, angry. I was mainly depressed before, but now I'm furious. I feel like he is still in an okay place and he isn't paying for his actions, beyond me leaving him. He will have my brother, his parents and others and move on with his life. While I lost everything. I hate him. We parted ways not on a happy note, and I told him to never get near me again. I was done. He asked me to see my brother still, that I was important to him, and tried to guilt trip me, and it worked, but I still think I can't. I don't know much about my mom and really hope she doesn't come find me anytime soon because I'm fuming right now and won't be able to handle it. I will be contacting my family and friends and finally doing the blasting today. I think it is about time, and after my talk with him, I got the extra push I needed. Editor's note. Top comment suggested moving to Australia. Can't fault that line of thinking. Update 2. A lot has happened. I did the blasting, and this is how it went down. I first posted on my family's FB group we share. This is from my mom's family side. I used inspiration of what you all suggested in my last post and said something around the lines of, I want to communicate to you all that my wedding with X has been permanently cancelled, since I found out that my mom, name, and my ex, name, had in the last few years a sexual relationship which resulted in the birth of my little brother, name. I had no clue of any of this, and I found out about it last week. I won't have a relationship with, name, mom, and ex, name, for obvious reasons. I would appreciate your understanding, and I felt it was only fair to let you know of the situation, since I value transparency and honesty above all. I also included a screenshot of my mother's message, what I said to her once I found out, and a message she managed to write back before I blocked her. Didn't open the message till before the blasting. I didn't want to read her and be persuaded. It exploded. I had family reaching out via text and calling the whole day after the blasting. I would say most were very supportive, and I could tell they were just shocked. There were a few neutral and some suspicious that it wasn't the whole story and maybe I misunderstood. My grandparents were in the maybe you misunderstood category, which wasn't surprising since my mom is super close to my grandparents, and like I said before, my mom was always a good mom. So no red flags. I will be moving with a cousin that is more like a sister to me. I haven't reached out to her previously because I knew once she knew everyone would. That's why I went to my friend's place. My cousin is devastated on my behalf and offered to live with her and her 2 kids until I can get my feet on the ground. I accepted and will be moving next week. I'm a bit afraid this will give my mom an easier access to me, but I can't stay at my friend's place forever. I then proceeded quickly to post a similar message for my, we share most of our friends since high school and local university, friends on Instagram. I created a close friends story and tagged most of them too. This went sort of viral in our friend group. Actually, one of my friends sent me my Reddit post and asked if this was me. I confirmed. They were also shocked and speechless. They never thought my ex would even remotely do anything like this. They said he was crazy about you. Oh well, apparently he went overboard on the crazy part. The group of friends is divided ATM, some are completely on my side, and some are thinking it isn't the whole truth. I told everyone that reached out that if they don't believe me to ask their friend if he is asking for custody of my little brother. That kinda shut them up for now. My ex deleted his social media. Also, my ex's parents called me like I guessed they would. They were kind to me and were very sorry about everything. I got the feeling they are also overwhelmed and very disappointed. However, it was clear they will be supporting their son. They are very upset at my mother, and don't want anything to do with her, but not sure how that will work with my little brother and everything else. They tried to give me info about the custody and what is my ex up to now, but I shut that down quickly and told them I don't want any info. I want to move on. I also asked them to not reach out in the near future, that I needed distance, especially if they will be supporting my ex. He is living with his parents ATM. Also, my ex and my mother after the blast were going nuts trying to reach out to me. They tried calling my friend, who she blocked them, and reaching out from different numbers. I had to put my phone on silent and ignore everyone. However, my mother sent me a long text from another number, and that was a weird text. She said that I was being cruel and that she didn't think she raised me that way. She said she thought we had a better relationship than me blasting out laundry like that without talking to her first. That I didn't have the whole picture. She did mention something that confused me. She said in her long-ass text that the reason she slept with my ex is because he reminded him of my dad. That it was grief. That she didn't mean to use him to heal her pain, but she wasn't strong enough. I don't even know what that means. Like, did she think that my ex looks physically like my dad? Or personality? Or what? I have seen photos of my dad, and well, yay, my ex isn't super different but also not super alike. I mean, they share brown dirty blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin. But that's not so uncommon. I don't see what else. I don't know. That threw me for a loop and honestly makes me want to confront my mom just to know what the hell. From all the things she could say, I was not expecting that. I'm holding on better. I don't cry every hour or want to murder them. But I'm still sad and upset, and it just feels like it isn't my life. That it is a big joke or a bad dream and I will wake up to my normal life. I also need to really start planning my future and start applying for jobs in other cities. Or maybe check the possibilities abroad more seriously. I might ask for 2-3 days off work to really get my thoughts together and do some research. I'm terrified TBH. I feel frozen, but I know I need to start moving. Editor's note, this one has some funny comments. Commenter 1, that mom is hilarious. I thought I raised you better. I never in a million years thought you'd fuck my boyfriend, but here we are. Commenter 2, my petty ass would be sending her that. Commenter 3, right. The irony of her blaming you for airing laundry when she did that. Commenter 4, the laundry wouldn't be dirty if you hadn't fucked my boyfriend on it.
How do I tell my host mom about her son's weird behavior? I feel like she won't believe me, and I don't know what to do. Original post, July 1st, 2024. I never thought this would happen. I cannot sleep tonight because of how helpless I feel in this situation. I am an au pair. I started at 19, went to Australia, and took care of 2 little girls, and I loved it. After a year, I came back home and went to college. But I decided that I wanted to travel again because I'm interested in teaching English abroad one day. I met a really great family on an accredited website that I used last time for my au pair match. I met a German family. They really liked me and I really liked them and the area. I have always wanted to go to Germany, so after about 3 months of talking and making sure there was no other family I wanted to go with more, we went through with it. Now I am in Germany, and I have been here for 2 months. They have 3 children, all boys, including a 1-year-old who is the cutest thing on earth, a 14-year-old who is friendly and sweet, and a 17-year-old who I do not really provide much care for. He kept to himself a lot and did not talk much with me, which I did not mind because I'm mainly there for the 2 younger ones. But some weird things started happening. I began to notice that he started staring at me a lot whenever we were alone, or even at family dinner. He walks up to me at times and it sounds like he's asking me questions in German, but I can't understand him. The oldest boys can speak English. When I tell him I don't understand him, he just walks away. I asked his brother once what he asked, and he said it was something bad, and he's told his brother to stop, but he won't listen. Then, over these past 2 weeks, he's made accidental contact with me. Sometimes he will brush up against me even when there's enough room for us to not bump into each other. 1 or 2 times, when this happened, I felt something on my waist, like his hand, but I thought maybe it was an accident. Now that they're out of school, we're alone at the house during the day while the parents work, and sometimes when I'm playing with the baby he will come and play with the baby too, but he will be very close to me, like to the point where I have no personal space. I have had to tell him a few times to give me space, and his younger brother has even said the same thing. Still, for some reason, I thought maybe he was just shy before and was starting to get comfortable with me. I did not want to jump to conclusions or label him as anything, so most of this I have let go. I really like hanging out with the baby and playing board games and other activities with the 14-year-old. He is a funny, nice kid. But the bad thing that really happened was yesterday. The family went for a walk, and I stayed behind because I had bad cramps. The oldest boy also said he did not feel like walking, so he stayed behind. We were there alone, and after they had left I tried to go to my room, but he blocked me. I kept asking him to move, but he kept blocking me. The look on his face, like he thought it was funny, scared me. He would not speak English with me when I kept asking him why he was doing this, and at this point, I felt scared and decided to walk the other way. I was going to hide in a bathroom until the others came back. But then he grabbed my arm and forced my body against his. I do not know if it was a forced hug or what, but I tried to pull away, but he reacted by tightening his grip, so I just froze. He let me go after a few seconds and just left the room. When the family came back, I went into my room for the night because I felt like I would just start crying in front of them. I do not know what I should do. I feel ashamed that I could not fight him off, and that I am literally being harassed by a boy so much younger than me. I am scared to tell the host parents because I can tell they love their son a lot, and at the end of the day, I am just a random girl that they have only known for 2 months. I am torn because I love the younger 2 so much already and wanted to have a good time in Germany. But this boy is acting so weird. I do not know why he went from basically ignoring me to doing this. I know that despite all of this I should probably try to talk to the host parents, probably my host mom, as I am more comfortable sharing this with her. But I just do not know how to bring that up. How do I basically tell her that her son did something really weird to me? I never thought I would have to do this or be in a situation like this, and I need some help. Please. Too long. Didn't read. I am an au pair. One of the boys who I live with has consistently been doing weird things to me, and yesterday, he forced me into a hug. I know I probably need to tell the host parents, but I don't know what to even say. I feel so helpless and alone right now. Update, July 3rd, 2024. Hello, I posted not so long ago about a really bad situation. I hope that it's okay for me to post an update even though it was removed. I received a lot of people reaching out to me asking if I was okay and if I could provide an update, so I wanted to give some closure. In short, I am an au pair in Germany and was being harassed by my host parent's son, who is 17 years old. He basically assaulted me, and although it is still hard for me to come to full terms with that word, I now know that it was, in fact, what it was. Yesterday was my day off, and after reading through everyone's advice, I contacted my agency that morning. I made sure to first get out of the house so no one would overhear me and to get away from the older boy. The younger boy, who is 14 years old, asked me if he could go with me as I was going to the library, and I did not mind taking him. Although technically he could go by himself, I see older children walking around alone a lot in Germany, but he specifically kept asking to go with me, and like I said before, He is a really good kid to be around. So I did not mind. I was planning to go to a closed-off area and make my phone calls while he went around looking for books, but while we were walking to the library, I could tell he wanted to say something. After a while, I asked if there was anything wrong, and after a bit of a pause, he asked me nervously if I was okay and if anything had happened yesterday. He said he was wondering why he did not see me at all anymore after they came back home. I did not say anything at first because I did not want to tell him inappropriate information. I told him I just had bad cramps, which was true, and wanted to sleep. But he is a smart kid, and I think he knew, because he asked if it was because of his older brother. When I did not say anything, as I was so caught off guard by his questions, he asked if I was leaving. He honestly looked so sad. He said he was sorry and that he hoped I did not have a bad impression of Germany now. I almost cried because of how depressed he sounded. I told him not to worry about it and that it had nothing to do with Germany, him or the baby, and that I would be okay. So I finally contacted my agency when we arrived at the library. I was so nervous that I was shaking when I made the call, but they were amazing and took everything I was saying seriously. I just told them that the oldest child was making me feel unsafe, and in vague terms what happened, without going into too much detail. They understood, thankfully, what I meant and told me that they would work on replacing me, if that's what I wanted. They also said they would reach out to the family to let them know of what was happening and of my concern with their son. I then called my mom. Being a mother, after I told her everything that had happened, she yelled at me a little. Not in an abusive way, but for not telling her sooner, and told me very sternly that I was not going back to that house tonight. Even being an adult, I don't argue with my mom when she uses that type of tone. She sounded so frantic, and sent me money to stay at a hotel for a while until they found me a new placement, even though she really just wanted me to come home. I felt a lot better after talking to her. After a while, the younger boy came back over and told me, very plainly, I am going to tell Mom. He would not listen to me when I told him not to, or not to put himself in that situation. I can handle it. He seemed very angry. He tried to reassure me that his parents would listen, and that they know that older brother causes trouble sometimes. They had another girl, a few years ago, that left because of him, and everyone thought maybe since he'd grown up and changed it would be different. I stayed at the library while he went home, and just waited. I did not know what was going to happen. I already had a hotel booked by then and knew I would probably need to go back to get my stuff. About an hour and a half later, I left the library. Since the parents were at home today, I felt somewhat safe going back to get my stuff. Before I got back, I received a call. It was from my host mom. When I answered, she was very frantic. She asked me if I was okay, and where I was. When I got to the house, the parents were in somewhat of an argument. I didn't understand all of it, because they went between German and English, but I heard some words like, not again, and ruining. In short, the mother pulled me aside. She said that she wasn't aware that the oldest son was still like this. She begged me not to leave. She told me she wanted her two youngest sons to have healthy attachments to their caregivers, and that it was very hard for them to do this with the oldest. She was actually crying during all of this, and told me she doesn't know why he acts like that, but she did not raise him like that. And that while she loved her son, she was not going to tolerate that behavior anymore. She said that once he turns 18 next week, I had no idea his birthday was next week, he will have to go live with his uncle and cousin in the Netherlands, for the sake of everyone in the house. She told me they, the parents, discussed it a bit when the first incident happened, but since he seemed to act better, they dropped it at the time. When I asked where he was, she said that he left quickly when his brother came home, saying he was going to a friend's house. He probably will not be back, and she said that even if he does, she will not let him in, and will tell him to go to his aunt's, who lives not that far, until he can go to the Netherlands. She actually looked very sincere and stern when she said this, and even though the father looked like he was in shock, he agreed with what she said. I did not know how to respond to them. It was not the reaction I was expecting, but I wanted to be honest. I told her that I was going to stay at a hotel for a while, and that she would probably hear from the agency. I told her that I loved the two younger boys, but I might not be back. She said she understood but would appreciate it if I at least thought about it for a day or two. Before I left, I hugged the baby and the 14-year-old goodbye. So that is what happened. I am safe in the hotel now. I didn't at all expect that reaction from them. I felt almost sick with worry when I wrote my first post. Of not being believed. But even though the oldest boy probably won't be back and will eventually be forced to leave, I still feel the effects of what happened lingering. I still feel vulnerable and overwhelmed when I even think about what happened. I feel so bad for the younger children. I'm not sure if I should go back or not. She told me to think about it. I will give it some time and see what my agency says first about other placements. I just wanted to thank everyone for helping me through something really difficult. But I am safe now in this hotel and am not going to rush back into any situation without thinking over my options and asking for my mom's opinion. Thank you once again. Too long, didn't read. I contacted my agency and mom. Both listened and took me seriously. I am now safe in a hotel and am waiting for my agency to get back with me on possible placements. My mom is helping support me financially and emotionally while I wait. The host parents find out about what happened. The 14-YO told them and reacted in a way I did not expect. They are begging me to stay, saying that the oldest boy will be sent to live with relatives for his behavior once he turns 18. I am not sure if I will go back, although I miss the younger two. I am going to wait until my agency gets back with me first before taking next steps. Thank you to everyone who reached out and helped me. Added comments. Commenter, as a German, this post infuriates me. First of all, therapy is free here. It sounds like the parents did absolutely nothing when this happened for the first time. They just hoped and thought their son got better. Secondly, the fact that they just want to get rid of their son by pushing him onto someone else instead of wanting him to face actual consequences, like going to the police with OP, is also infuriating. German police aren't perfect, but my own experiences with them have been genuinely good, and I want to encourage OP to go to the police. Lastly, the parents are trying to make OP stay in a house where she was assaulted. That alone is so utterly tone deaf that it's hard to believe. Sorry, Netherlands. OP. Yeah, I've officially made up my mind that I'm not going back there. It hurts because I do love the younger children so much. I hope they will be okay. The kids I watch become a part of me in a way. I still keep in contact with the family from Australia, and the younger ones here really seemed comfortable around me. The mom even said they usually aren't as open at first with new people like they were with me. I might still keep the host mom's contact info just to see if I can check up on them every now and then, purely for that purpose. Now that I'm really reflecting on it, it was a little strange that she still wanted me to stay after what happened. I thought maybe, for my mental health, she would encourage me to leave. But I think she is desperate for an au pair since they work a lot. It's amazing that therapy is free. I will suggest to the host mom that maybe the 14-year-old might need someone to talk to. I made sure to tell him that I was not abandoning him, and he seemed to understand. He is very level-headed for his age. I know he will continue to grow into an even more amazing young adult as he gets older. He told me he wouldn't forget me, and he would tell his baby brother about me a lot, so he will always remember too. It's also good to hear about the police. I always worry about being a foreign girl and not being taken seriously in another country. I am going to reach out to the Weiser Ring, like another poster suggested, and see if they can help me in that aspect. I feel bad for the people that might encounter him in the Netherlands, but I heard they don't play around there. So I hope he gets some sense into him soon. But there are vulnerable girls and women everywhere, so it does leave me with a sad feeling. OP makes another update in the comments. To give an update, I spoke with the agency sometime earlier today and asked them if there have been other au pairs with this family. They said this is their first time placing someone with the family, and if another au pair was with the family before, it was probably through another agency, but they had no knowledge of this, and when they interviewed the family was told this was a new experience for them. I am thinking maybe the other girl was through another agency. There are a few of them. I'm not sure that all au pair agencies can see each other's networks, but they said they will look further into it. They told me that for now, they will not be placing any new girls with this family, so that gave me some peace of mind. OP makes another update in the comments. To give an update, I spoke with the agency sometime earlier today and asked them if there have been other au pairs with this family. They said this is their first time placing someone with the family, and if another au pair was with the family before, it was probably through another agency, but they had no knowledge of this, and when they interviewed the family was told this was a new experience for them. I am thinking maybe the other girl was through another agency. There are a few of them. I'm not sure that all au pair agencies can see each other's networks, but they said they will look further into it. They told me that for now, they will not be placing any new girls with this family. So that gave me some peace of mind.
My wife and I want to adopt our foster daughter, but my father-in-law is furious. How can we protect her while dealing with his cruelty? My wife and I have two biological teenage sons, one older and one younger than our foster daughter. We have been fostering kids for many years, but the goal has always been to reunify the kids with their parents, which has happened successfully each time until now. 2 years ago we took in our foster daughter, now mid-teens. She had been through a lot and was labeled as a troubled kid and not adoptable. I won't go into details, but the issue in this matter is that there are images of her going around amongst a certain community from before we took her in. We were informed by authorities about all of this before, so it's not like this came as a surprise after we got to know her. I'm not going to lie, it has not been easy. Our families have seen us struggle, but almost everyone has been super supportive. The first 5 and 6 months were the hardest. She didn't trust us, and she was angry at the world, rightfully so. Then one random night I got up in the middle of the night and unintentionally ended up scaring her shitless, and she had a full-blown panic attack. She was okay after a little while, but it was like something clicked for her that night. It was like she realized that we were on her side, and we watched her change from this angry and sad little girl to the ambitious young teenager we know today. It started with her telling us thank you for everything we did, small things like driving her to practice. And she said it with a smile on her face. It was so amazing to see her feeling better and not so lonely anymore. From there everything changed. She made new friends and got a lot closer to my sons, especially the older one. Her grades went from failing multiple classes to getting straight A's. Not because we were nagging her, but because she wanted to. Each member of our household has developed a good and strong relationship with her, and the love we have for this girl cannot be put into words. We've reached that cosmic connection. She still struggles with a few things, which is totally fair after all she's been through, but she is working on it, and we are supporting her in every way we can. Overall, she's doing amazing. She's so strong, and I'm very proud of her. We made the decision to fight the system to change their verdict from not adoptable to available for conditional adoption, because we want to commit to her for life. We want to adopt her. Last month we got the call that they changed their verdict, and we sent in our papers that were already ready, and things are looking very promising. The thing is, we haven't told her yet. She knows that she is now adoptable, but we haven't asked her if she wants us to officially adopt her yet. My wife and I have talked to our sons about it, and they are fully on board. We talked to my parents, our brothers and sisters, and their spouses. All of them have a good relationship with our daughter, and every single one of them is so supportive of our decision and willing to fully welcome our daughter into our family. Then there are the wife's parents. Mother-in-law hasn't been awful, I guess, but maybe it's because I'm comparing what she said to what father-in-law said. We told them about our plan and asked them about their opinion. Mother-in-law asked if we were sure, as our daughter doesn't quite fit in. My wife and I didn't understand at all, since our daughter has a very mother-in-law personality as we and our sons do. But it turns out she's concerned about the visual side of it, as she's clearly not our biological child, and people will start asking questions. The thing is, my wife, myself, and our sons are very tall. Our daughter is not. She is tiny compared to us and has a similar eye color, but not the exact same. All 5 of us have the same skin tone and colored and textured hair. Not that I think this matters at all, but the stupidity of it is unreal. Apart from height, she could pass as our biological daughter, so I'm starting to think this is a lame excuse for something else. I told her that people would ask questions no matter what, because even if our daughter was the spitting image of my wife, it's not like she suddenly gave birth to a teenager 2 years ago. And the answer to any question is very simple. She's adopted. Ta-da! It's not like it could ever become a secret now, so I don't get it. Mother-in-law didn't say much after that, but it was very clear she was not on board. Father-in-law hadn't said anything, but he didn't seem excited at all. I asked for his opinion, and he just stared at us for a minute, and then he said, "Don't do this to yourself and our family." It's safe to say I was confused, but I had no idea what to say. After a few more seconds he went off. He started talking about their family name, and he didn't want that ruined by a little whore, and what would people think if they saw these images floating around on the internet. I was stunned. My wife couldn't find any words either and started crying before she just left. I didn't say a word while my father-in-law finished ranting, but 1,000 thoughts went through my head. Eventually he stopped talking, and I still had trouble finding any words to say. I just told him, "You are sick." And I left too. My wife is destroyed after hearing what her father thinks about our daughter. We have no idea how they know about these images, as we haven't told anyone about it. I'm 100% certain my wife didn't tell them, as their relationship is not that great. My wife is closer to my mother than her own, so that wouldn't make sense. We have tried to hide this from the kids since this happened, but my older son sensed something was very wrong and asked about it. I told him our conversation with ILSS about adopting our daughter didn't go very well, and they weren't supportive. He wanted to know why. I told him I couldn't tell him, but that it was serious, and promised to talk to him about it in a few years when he's an adult. And I assured him that our daughter didn't do anything wrong, our plans haven't changed, and that it's the father-in-law who is being unreasonable. My son told me that our daughter told him a few months ago that she didn't think ILs liked her very much, especially father-in-law. This happened 2 days ago, and we haven't spoken to them since. I'm not sure I even want to try, TBH. For me, this is going no contact worthy. I want nothing to do with them. My wife is in pieces and has mentioned that she doesn't want them in her life after this. This has tainted our adoption experience for sure. I'm afraid though that if we piss father-in-law off even more, that he will start talking to our father-in-law about these images. I do realize that he will look like a pig in everyone's eyes, but I would like to spare our daughter from everyone knowing about what's out there. I usually talk to my mother about heavy stuff in life, but I cannot talk to her about this without feeling like I'm exposing my daughter by telling my mother more than I want to for my daughter's sake. Internet strangers. I have no idea what to do from here. How do I go about the situation with my father-in-law without creating more mess than absolutely necessary for my daughter? Edit to add, just to be very clear. There's no doubt in our minds that we still want to ask for our daughter's permission to adopt her. Our relationship with our daughter will not change no matter what the father-in-law does or does not do. I realized from the first couple of comments that it became unclear after the father-in-law incident. Sorry about that. Edit to add 4 hours later. I'm glad to see I'm not the only one hopefully reading too much into this. I think you have verified I'm not crazy. Wife and I had a brief talk after I posted and have decided to talk to her brothers and sister first about my father-in-law's comments. It will be a hard conversation, but it needs to happen. Before I could get to it, my wife told me she wanted to report the situation with her father knowing about the images of our daughter. Right now we don't know what that looks like, but it has simply not been possible for him to gain this knowledge legally. There is a culprit for sure, but we will leave that to the authorities for now. Thank you for giving me a reality check. And thank you for your encouragement, we need it right now. We broke up just after a month of dating because my boyfriend gave me a very bad and sexist book. Now I'm happy with my same-age husband. I met my boyfriend in our master's program. We became friends over this past year and started dating and becoming serious shortly before I left the state for a summer internship. He gifted me a book to read, saying it was one he liked. It's A Spell for Chameleon, by Piers Anthony, a fantasy novel written several decades ago. I knew nothing about it prior, and began laughing at it 2 pages in because of how ridiculous the writing was, especially about women. We Skyped after I got through the first chapter, and I tried respectfully explaining my doubts about the book. He made a deal with me. Knowing I'm a big Harry Potter fan, he promised to give the HP series a chance, starting with Philosopher's Stone, if I gave his book a chance and kept reading. This rocked my world, and I had a sudden burst of motivation. I'm on chapter 3, and I cannot stand this book. It is one of the most sexist and misogynistic texts I have ever had to read, and it honestly makes me feel like crap. Not to mention it's just poorly written all around, painfully spoon-feeding obvious symbolism, and excessively throwing in fantasy creatures concepts that do nothing for the plot. The protagonist is a complete dillhole that I couldn't care less about, and as a reader, I don't want to follow him or anything in the fantasy world of Xanth. But of course, flat out telling my boyfriend those thoughts about a book he enjoys would be hurtful, and he has every right to have different preferences. I am shocked that he would recommend such a book to me though. He is a respectful and educated man, treating me very well and identifying as a proud feminist. This recommendation was out of left field. Does he not remember how hurtful the author's writing on women is? Did he read it at a young age, and has since grown? I can't expect him to hold his end of the bargain and read Harry Potter, which is fine, especially if it means not having to put myself through Piers Anthony's excuse for writing ever again. I like my boyfriend a lot. How do I respectfully tell him why I cannot invest in this book anymore? It's important to me that he realizes the negative messages being suggested, but I want to do this without insulting his taste or making him feel at fault. TL Doctor, boyfriend gave me a book to read, and I accept it. I think it's sexist and poorly written. How do I tell him that I cannot keep reading? Should I explain my concerns? Relevant comments. OP explains why the book is horrible. Example 1, I like beautiful girls, he said. And I like smart girls, but I don't trust the combination. I'd settle for an ordinary girl, except she'd get dull after a while. Sometimes I want to talk with someone intelligent, and sometimes I want to... He broke off. Her mind was like that of a child. It wasn't really right to impose such concepts on her. Example 2. That's the point, he said. I like variety. I would have trouble living with a stupid girl all the time, but you aren't stupid all the time. Ugliness is no good for all the time, but you aren't ugly all the time either. You are variety. And that is what I crave for the long-term relationship, and what no other girl can provide. Example 3. All women are the same inside. They differ only in appearance and talent. They all use men. Example 4. That whole rape trial in chapter 3. Example 5. Other girls manage to enhance their appearance by cosmetics or padding or specialized spells, but besides Sabrina all other females look somewhat artificial. She was no enemy. This was the PG-2 example I mentioned. Example 6. There was much more of her he longed to see, and to touch, but that could come only after marriage. She was that sort of girl, and it was part of her appeal. The girls who had it didn't need to put it on casual display. PG-3, Mikatoba. Oh good lord. I looked up the book and thought, this couldn't be that bad, could it? I guess it is that bad. Top comment. The first thing to ask is when he last read this book. If, like you said, he hasn't read it since adolescence, he may not remember how truly awful it is. If he's read it recently and still recommended it, well, I'd be totally honest about how I felt about it. But that's just me. You can certainly just tell him you gave it a fair shake, but it wasn't your cup of tea. Update. The post was locked shortly after I put it up, so I wasn't able to comment back to most of you. I went through every comment and took them all into consideration. Thank you all for your thoughts. We Skyped the other night and the topic came up. I started by saying I liked him a lot and really do appreciate how much he's willing to share with me. He caught on to where I was going with this and started laughing. Then I started laughing. And I realized how silly small of a thing this all was. I guess I didn't want to risk hurting his feelings. When the reason why I didn't like the book came up, I explained, and he totally understood. It's been at least a decade since he's read the book, and he can see where I would feel uncomfortable. He will still consider reading the first HP book, since I gave his book a chance. And being a single dad, his kids also like the series, so it would be a chance for him to connect more with them. I ended by saying that I hope this doesn't discourage him from sharing more things he likes. If anything, it encourages me to find more that you'll appreciate. Q heart flutters. TL.ER, good talk, he's awesome. New update. Hi. I would reply to this under the username you lazy chickbum, but it got locked a little over a year ago. Reddit banned me for sharing a mayor's office contact information lol, and I created this one shortly after. It's hilarious this post is being shared because it's from such a different time in my life. Your instincts are right. This relationship only lasted a month after this post. I took an opportunity to live and study abroad for a few months, and it was clear that he didn't want anything that deep, dodged any conversation that required vulnerability, didn't like that I wasn't always 100% perky, etc. I also had a rough breakup before this and wasn't making the best judgment calls when it came to dating. I could have caught a few more things about him that give similar concerns now as this book recommendation then. So I called it off. Oh my god, then he suddenly wanted to make it work, and kept it up for over a year after the breakup. We weren't even together that long. He would text me as if we never ended, and I would shut it down. He eventually stopped, but I still get occasional notifications on LinkedIn that he viewed my profile. I'm now happily married to someone my age, not knocking appropriate relationships with age gaps. I'm good friends with a couple who are 12 years apart, but I dodged a bullet, folks. Thanks for giving me a good laugh with this flashback.
After years of my dad enabling his entitled wife's toxic behavior, I finally went no contact when she attacked my kid over a wedding dispute. I attempted to share this story on Am I the Asshole? Through a different account a couple of days ago, but it did not go through. Considering the trigger warning, it is understandable. Since then, I have concluded that my wife and I made the right decision, so this will be my final attempt to post this story. I have tried to include more information and adjust the wording slightly. All names mentioned are fictitious. My stepmother, who is 49 years old, fancies herself a party planner. She has assumed the responsibility of organizing and hosting every party and holiday my dad's family has held since marrying him. I never enjoyed those occasions growing up. She is controlling and gets upset if anyone complains about anything, but I tolerated it for my dad's sake. According to him, this helps her feel included. I am getting married to my fiancée, Jane, who is 26 years old in July. We got engaged in early 2021, but Jane became pregnant a couple of months later, and we decided to postpone the wedding to focus on our son for a while. So, we have had a long engagement. From the very beginning, my stepmother has tried to take over our wedding plans, complaining, contacting our planner, showing up unannounced at Jane's dress appointments, and more. We have repeatedly asked her to stop. My dad wants us to humor her, but she is clearly resentful that she is not hosting the wedding or being labeled as mother of the groom on the invitations. Besides our baby boy, we also have Luke, a 4-year-old, who is Jane's paternal half-brother. She gained custody of him a few months into our relationship after his parents passed away. I moved in with them during the pandemic and have been in Luke's life since he was a baby. He doesn't call me dad and refers to us as his sister and his OP, but we love him like a son. My stepmother, however, hates Luke. She accuses Jane of baby trapping her way into the family. This accusation only worsened after our son was born. My dad gets along with Jane and adores the kids, but my stepmother demands that he refuse to babysit Luke, so we rarely leave the kids with him. Instead, Jane's brother and sister-in-law usually watch the kids for us, as their children are close to ours in age. Last Sunday we had an event, and my brother-in-law was out of town with his family. Jane's other siblings live in different cities, as do my mother and sister. My father agreed to babysit at our place, so we left the children with him. When we returned, we found both kids crying, my stepmother screaming, and my father weakly trying to calm everyone down. Apparently Luke had told my stepmother that both he and our son would be the ring bearers at our wedding, and she lost her temper. She screamed that she would not allow that because he was not family. This escalated to the point where I needed to include a trigger warning. When Luke started crying, his lip was still split. She had never gone this far before. We immediately banned her from our house and our wedding. My father is furious and has said he will not attend without her. He has also convinced half of his side of the family, including my stepbrother, to boycott the wedding by severely downplaying what my stepmother did. My stepbrother fully agrees with his mother, no matter how many times I try to tell him the truth. Jane and I are steadfast in our decision, but many of my cousins, who are now not coming to the wedding, are asking us to reconsider. Almost all of Jane's family supports our decision, although one of her aunts suggested that my stepmother might be acting out because she does not feel welcomed by my family. I have honestly reached my limit with my family's enabling of her behavior. I love my father and really want him at my wedding, but I am more than willing to let him go if it means protecting my family. Edit. I believe I accidentally deleted the paragraph where I mentioned this, but we did press charges. We took Luke to the pediatrician the following day and gathered every piece of evidence we had. Not only did we have pictures of Luke's face, but, by some miraculous strike of luck, we also had nanny cam footage. Some commenters correctly assumed that my stepmother had not been invited to our house, but my father has not really gone anywhere without her in years, so we took precautions. We did not expect her to actually do anything this terrible, but we have never trusted her with the kids. The physical attack happened off camera, but there is some footage of her screaming and Luke crying before and after the event. She now has a child abuse charge on her record. We would not let her get away with this. Edit 2. There is a lot of additional information I want to add. I will try to respond to at least some of the comments. I did not expect the amount I have received so far, but for now, I will add that Luke is okay. The visit to the pediatrician happened the day after the incident. He already had a counselor because Jane was quite traumatized when her dad and stepmom died, and she was worried it might affect him. We have continued with his treatment. We have been hugging and pampering him a little more than usual too. He is still upset but is already doing much better. Update: the entitled stepmother has managed to get herself banned from my wedding. I want to thank everyone who took the time to read and/or comment on my previous post. It has been a tough week, but it is always heartening to know that people care. Although I have not been able to reply to every comment, I will try to address some in this update. This might get a bit lengthy. To begin with, Jane and I have decided to go no contact, NC, with my father and my stepmother. We have not really spoken to either of them since the incident, and I do not intend to be the one to reach out. Any communication between us is being handled by my younger sister, who is entirely on our side, but we maintain low contact for the time being. I have chosen to adopt Jane's approach to dealing with people she cares about. Forgive what is apologized for, but never forget. Essentially, if my dad or stepmother ever truly understand what they did wrong and sincerely apologize, we are willing to forgive them, albeit reluctantly. However, we will never ignore or let them forget the harm they caused our family. For now, neither of them will be allowed near Luke, our baby, or any future children we may have, even if we do eventually forgive them. Regarding the rest of my family, I read numerous comments suggesting that I post pictures of Luke's face as well as the nanny cam footage. Although I am not very active on social media, even if I were, I would not feel comfortable exposing my injured preschooler in that manner, especially given that nothing on the internet ever truly disappears. I also decided not to share the pictures with my family unless it is absolutely necessary. It is worth mentioning that while my family adores my father, most of them are not very fond of my stepmother. She had 2 failed marriages prior to meeting my father, the first of which resulted in my stepbrother, and my father cheated on his then girlfriend to be with her. My family loved that girlfriend and disliked my stepmother from the beginning. Not only has she been controlling and manipulative from the start, but she has also tried to force her way into the role of the family matriarch by any means possible. Taking over the planning duties for every family event was her favorite way to do this because of all the attention and compliments that come with it. The primary reason I disliked these parties while growing up was that my stepmother always managed to make everything about her, even events like Christmas and my sisters and my birthdays. The rest of the family felt indifferent towards her, but they never truly liked her. However, things were different with Luke. Most of my relatives did not meet him until COVID restrictions were eased, and by that time, he was already 2 years old. He is a bright and genuinely lovable child, and since there were no other small children in the family, everyone immediately began doting on him. From my perspective, my stepmother was upset that Jane and Luke were so easily accepted by my family, which was a stark contrast to her own experience, and this fueled her resentment towards them. Although I cannot confirm this, she was also angry that she had no role in planning the wedding or being part of the wedding party. She tried to pressure us into letting her officiate, but that role had already been offered to one of Jane's best friends a year ago. My stepbrother was not interested in being my best man, and I had already chosen my best friend for that role. We had asked Jane's sister's daughter to be our flower girl, and we had promised Jane's 3-year-old niece. Also, her sister's daughter is 15 and does not know us well. She even tried to convince us to let my father walk Jane down the aisle since her father had passed away, but her eldest brother, the brother-in-law I mentioned earlier, had already been enlisted for that role. My stepmother was disappointed that my family was not as involved in the wedding as Jane's family and kept making comments about how things would be different if she were in charge. Despite all of this, nothing justifies being that terrible to a child. Especially if it stems from the petty jealousy I suspect. Since I have not spoken with my father, my sister has been keeping me informed about his activities. Through her I discovered that the story my father and stepmother told the rest of the family completely omits Luke's injury and the abuse charges. They implied that Jane and I banned them out of annoyance with my stepmother and decided to take it out on my father as well. Given that most people already disliked my stepmother, explaining what actually happened that night was not difficult, and most of the relatives I wanted at the wedding have since apologized and are criticizing my father. The people who did not believe us, as well as those claiming we overreacted, have been told they are no longer welcome in our home. These individuals are mostly from my father's generation, so I am not surprised. However, realizing that they are so biased that they would protect a woman they hate after she hurt a child, just to make my father happy, has convinced me that I do not need any of them in my life. My stepbrother is still in denial. He refuses to accept that his mother could harm a child, despite all the evidence we have. I must admit, I understand his perspective. I love my mother too. But that does not excuse his blindness to the situation, so he is also banned. It is unfortunate because we were close growing up, but I have no regrets. Additionally, Jane has 3 other siblings besides Luke. The older brother-in-law, a twin brother, and a younger sister, and I am closer to them than I ever was to him. Regarding Jane's family, they are all furious about what happened and have been incredibly supportive. Jane's maternal relatives essentially adopted Luke after she gained custody of him, and they frequently call to ensure he is okay. With the money saved from those we uninvited, we decided to help Jane's cousin. She lives in another country and was previously unable to attend the wedding, so we are covering her plane ticket. Luke is doing much better and is nearly back to his cheerful self. His split lip was shallow, healing slowly but did not require stitches. A few days ago, we sat him down and explained that my father and stepmother would no longer be around. Although he really liked my dad, he understands that my dad and stepmother are inseparable. Luke is clearly scared of her, but we are doing our best to make him feel safe. Jane and I have reassured him that he is family, we love him, and no one will ever change that. I am not too worried about my dad or stepmother trying to show up at the wedding, but we have alerted the venue and provided them with pictures just in case they try anything. It is better to be safe than sorry. Some people brought attention to the fact that SM is a hypocrite for saying Luke isn't family. I agree for obvious reasons. Her main excuse for pretty much everything she does is that she doesn't feel like my family welcomes her. Dad has been guilting me to take part in everything she plans by reminding us of that for as long as I can remember. The way he continues to make excuses for her without realizing this is basically a case of the pot calling the kettle black, except Luke actually is family. This has made me accept that while I will always love my dad, it's not healthy or safe for me and my family to be around him anymore. It hurts to know my son won't have his only remaining biological grandfather in his life, but he has 2 amazing step-grandpas to make up for it. For now, I'm sad but satisfied with how things have turned out. I don't like to complain about my life. It's a mess, but a beautiful one. I love my fiancé, I love my kids, and I'm lucky enough to love my job. We're happy. I'm not letting anyone ruin that. For those who were bothered by my censorship in my previous post on Am I the A, it was Jane who suggested that I make the writing less explicit. Since I am still getting used to Reddit, I may have gone a bit overboard. I hope this will be my final update on this story, but I will keep you informed. Again, thank you all for your love and support. Best wishes to everyone. Update 1. My stepmother, my family, and my children. I will start by saying that this may disappoint many people. We are beginning to accept the likelihood that my stepmother will only receive a minimal punishment. Jane and I are consulting with our lawyer about our next steps, but we are still uncertain about how to proceed. It is too early to determine anything definitively, so we are trying not to get ahead of ourselves more than we already have. However, I'm relieved to announce that we're getting started on the process for a restraining order against stepmom. We're using the same evidence we gathered the week following the incident, including the nanny cam footage and pictures of Luke, and we'll focus on that for the time being. I still haven't spoken to my father. My sister is still in LC but is seriously considering cutting ties with him. Because my sister is the only one on my side that still talks to him, my father keeps trying to ask her about me and whether I've calmed down yet. According to her, he's annoyed that half of his family refuses to talk to him but still doesn't seem to accept why. I told my sister that she doesn't need to keep playing messenger pigeon between me and our father. I never asked her to do it, and it's clearly taking a toll on her, but she insists she'll stop when it feels right. Either way, there is absolutely no doubt whether SM attacked Luke. Not only did Luke say it the moment we got home, but that was also confirmed by my father in a failed attempt to defend her behavior. He never tried to hide it from us. That and the fact that he gave Luke an ice bag are literally the only positive things I can say about his actions. SM was too busy screaming about how much of a whining brat Luke was being to deny it. To those who guessed SM is younger than my dad, you get an invisible cookie. She's also 5 years younger than his previous girlfriend. They got together when I was around 15. Also, stepbrother is only a month older than me. She turns 50 later this year, had him at 21, and married his father a year later. Both our kids are doing mostly okay. Luke's back to running around the house in his Superman costume whenever he doesn't have anything better to do. He did have a few nightmares this past week and is asked to sleep in our bed twice. We don't mention my father around him, and he's still seeing his counselor. Our 14-month-old son has learned 2 new words. Hi, and, bye. And Luke is trying to teach him to say his name. Jane's sister, who moved away for college, is coming over for a couple of days to celebrate her 21st birthday later this month. Luke is excited to see her, and Jane is excited to get drunk with her. Can't say I blame her. We're hoping her presence will cheer us all up. I'm not doing so good, and neither is Jane. She's usually the kind of person who tries to keep her negative emotions to herself. But she cried herself to sleep almost every night the week it happened. It breaks my heart to see her like that, and I can't help but feel like this is my fault. There's a part of me trying to tell myself I had no way of knowing SM would do anything like that, but that doesn't really change anything. I allowed my father near my kids unsupervised, even though I knew she'd probably tag along. This is the guiltiest I've ever felt, and I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. Jane has been doing better recently and is encouraging me to see a therapist. I have never really done that before, except for seeing a psychiatrist when I was younger, but now seems like the right time to try it. I was taken aback by a few messages this week from people suggesting that I forgive my father and stepmother and even invite them back to the wedding. That is definitely not happening. In fact, I am not willing to ever forgive my stepmother. My father is now a very uncertain possibility, but I will never understand or forget what she did. Although the wedding is currently the last thing on our minds, we are not postponing it. We did consider rescheduling, but the date we chose is the only one that works for our guests. We have set up passwords with all our vendors and instructed them to only communicate with us. Jane's family is larger and closer knit, which is why they are more involved in the wedding than mine, but I still have family participating. My sister is one of the bridesmaids, 2 of my cousins are groomsmen, and my mom will walk down the aisle with the wedding party. Going through all of this with Jane has made me realize even more how much I love her. I could not ask for a better partner to start a family with, and I cannot imagine what I would do without her. This ordeal has not torn us apart, and I am incredibly grateful for that. I probably will not make any more updates until after the wedding unless something significant happens in the meantime. As always, best wishes to all of you. Update 2. I saw my father and stepmother for the first time since she attacked my child. I did not plan on updating again before the wedding, but something quite significant happened. The good news is that we got the restraining order. The bad news is that Jane and I had to see both my stepmother and my father at the court hearing. This was our first time seeing them since we expelled them from our home over a month ago, and neither of us was looking forward to it. We left the children with Jane's brother and sister-in-law, so at least Luke did not have to see them. The hearing proceeded much faster than I had anticipated. I must give credit where it is due. My father was at least wise enough to realize they had no chance of winning. There was a substantial amount of evidence against them. We had nanny cam footage, pictures of Luke, his medical records, and my sister had compiled every text and email my stepmother had sent to her and the rest of the family regarding the incident. Additionally, there were numerous phone recordings of my stepmother discussing the events. They did not even bother to hire an attorney for the hearing. The judge issued a protection order against my stepmother, prohibiting her from coming within 500 feet of us or our property. We are changing all our locks this week, and I am also considering changing my phone number. I have to admit, leaving the courthouse was the first time I felt truly safe since this entire ordeal began. Jane was on the verge of tears with happiness when we got to the car. We picked up the kids and celebrated at McDonald's with my brother-in-law and his family. Hours later, my father called me. The protection order does not apply to him, so he is still able to contact us. Jane and the kids were in bed, so I answered. I didn't expect him to change his mind and apologize all of a sudden, but decided to give him one last chance. He tried to start some awkward small talk, but I told him to get to the point. He asked me if the order was truly necessary. I stated very clearly that SM was never coming near Jane or my children again, and that I was glad I had the RO to formalize that. Every excuse he had for SM was pretty easy to shut down. But she only hit him once. Yep, and that's enough for me. The kids need their grandma. She's not their grandma, Mom is. She's my wife. You need to respect her. She attacked Luke. She disrespected my family and my own house. I don't owe her anything, least of all my respect. He then went on a rant about family, how much of a godsend SM was, and everything she'd done for me and my sister since she came into our lives. I replied by listing every time I could remember about her lying, overstepping a boundary, or acting unhinged around me, my family, or my sister. I brought up both my adult life and my youth. Examples included her attempts to hijack most of our milestones recently, our wedding plans, our son's birth, Jane's baby shower, and my sister's college graduation, her obsession with the idea of a perfect family, and her disgusting attitude towards Luke. I also made sure to mention her habits of going through mine and my sister's stuff when we were younger. It's trivial compared to everything else, but this behavior went on until my sister moved out of their house only 3 months ago. We're pretty sure she found out about Jane's wedding dress appointments by reading my sister's planner while she wasn't home. For instance, some of the memories I mentioned are long and hard to explain, but they did cement the fact that SM means nothing to me. He tried to go with the whole "she doesn't feel included" excuse again, but I shut him up. I said he'd had the opportunity to protect his grandchildren but had chosen his monster of a wife instead. And that's enough for me to want nothing to do with him. I hung up without saying goodbye. My sister informed me that he called her afterward, and she told him she was going no contact with him as well. I think we are both beginning to accept that our father will not change. It is unfortunate, but he has made his priorities clear, and his children and grandchildren are not among them. That is all for now. With these memories fresh in my mind, I am considering sharing some of the stories I reminded my father of, but that will take some time. Until then, best wishes to all of you. Update 3. My stepmother attempted to hijack our baby shower. In my last post, I mentioned that I was thinking about sharing some stories from before I obtained the restraining order against my stepmother and went no contact with my father. While there are many worth recounting, I will start with one of my sister's favorites. My fiancée Jane discovered she was pregnant in June 2021, and we announced the news to our immediate families in August. Initially, my stepmother was completely uninterested in our baby. Not that I expected much from someone whose reaction to our pregnancy announcement was to ask Jane if she was sure the baby was mine. Even my father criticized her for that one, but she barely seemed to acknowledge our pregnancy. Instead, she focused more on my stepbrother, who was also engaged and would soon provide her with beautiful grandchildren. We did not complain, as we did not want her involved, and we did not even have to say anything. Organizing our baby shower turned out to be quite a challenge. Jane and I had to work until the holidays, and I wanted to be actively involved in the planning. With our due date set for February 2022, we decided that early January would be the ideal time for the shower. We enlisted my sister Laura and Jane's best friend Nina to help us plan the event. Jane and I are generally laid-back people, so we didn't want an extravagant party or to spend too much money since we were saving for both the baby and the wedding. We decided early on that the shower would be co-ed and, given the time of year, would need to be held indoors. We settled on a guest list of 25 people plus about a dozen kids. We came up with the idea of hosting a pizza party. Since moving in together, Jane, Luke, our brother-in-law and sister-in-law's surrogate son, and I have enjoyed homemade pizza nights every week, and we thought it would be fun to incorporate this tradition into the shower. Nina found an event venue with a pizza oven, and Laura figured out ways to integrate traditional baby shower elements into our theme. The resulting plans were fantastic. Guests could make their own pizzas, enjoy non-alcoholic drinks, and children could customize plain bodysuits. Nina and Laura blended pizza-themed decor with baby-themed decor and even found pizza-shaped sweets. It initially seemed like a chaotic mix, but they made it work beautifully, and we loved the outcome. By the middle of November, most of the planning was complete. Well, later that month my stepbrother's fiancée left him for her ex. They'd been together for 4 years at that point, and it was both sudden and traumatizing for him. He was devastated. SM then realized the grandkid she dreamed of would take longer to come than she thought, so naturally, without her son's milestones to obsess over, she moved on to mine. Suddenly my stepmother went from an aloof relative to an excited grandma-to-be with Facebook posts, tacky, promoted to Nana shirts, and the whole 9 yards. At first we were too busy finishing things up at work and getting ready for the holidays to worry about that, but it didn't take long for her to start pestering us about planning the baby shower as well as a gender reveal. We denied the possibility of a gender reveal party. No offense to those who like them, but we don't. Plus we had decided to wait until birth to find out the sex. SM tried to get us to find out and tell her as a Christmas present, but we didn't. We also denied her the baby shower. She told my father, and he told Laura to let SM help out with the plans. She was still living with them at the time, so she didn't have much of a choice. She called Nina, and they met SM for coffee. Though I wasn't there for that meeting, Laura told me what happened later. Before Laura and Nina could even discuss their plans, my stepmother immediately launched into her own. According to Laura, she pulled out a surprisingly thick binder from her bag, complete with the words "Oh baby" on the cover, colorful tabs, and pieces of fabric sticking out. She then flipped straight to the section dedicated to the baby shower. Although it was shorter compared to the rest of the binder, it was still lengthy and focused solely on her vision for the baby shower. Laura sent me pictures, and I have to admit, it looked like the most Instagram-worthy baby shower ever. However, it was also barely functional and clearly very expensive. The decorations included balloons, oversized teddy bears, giant alphabet blocks, and cringe-inducing signs. Stepmother prioritized aesthetics over comfort, with uncomfortable chairs and fancy food ideas that didn't even look edible. Most of the food contained soft cheeses, which Jane couldn't eat. The color palette consisted of 3 different shades of pink with gold accents. We would have been okay with a pink-themed shower if there was some variety. But stepmother's pictures looked like Barbie had thrown up all over Hello Kitty's birthday party. When Nina reminded her that we didn't know the baby's sex, stepmother insisted she just knew it was a girl. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. She also wanted an all-female child-free party with fancy caterers and alcohol. Her guest list included some of her closest friends, but neither Jane's nor my mother's were on it. She also planned party games that no one had any interest in. Essentially, the only thing everyone could agree on was to hold the party indoors. Laura and Nina were not given the chance to present their plans until stepmother was finished. Once they had the opportunity, they explained that although they could incorporate some of stepmother's ideas, the pizza theme had already been decided. She tried to object, but Laura firmly stated that it was generous of them to even consider incorporating her ideas, given that the shower was a month away and we had already approved their plans. Stepmother even called me to try to persuade me to change their minds, but I just echoed what Laura had said. My father had discovered he couldn't attend the shower, so he no longer had any influence over the plans. As the holidays approached, the topic was dropped, and my stepmother seemed to accept the pizza party idea. Nina cleverly paired some of the pink decor stepmother wanted with matching blue items, and even included one of the huge teddy bears. Fast forward to a week before the shower. Jane was nearly 8 months pregnant. All the decorations had been bought. The guests had RSVP'd, and everything was set to go. The shower was scheduled to begin at 7 p.m. Stepmother offered to arrive early to prepare everything. Laura agreed, knowing that stepmother would complain if she did not get help, and the venue allowed them to drop off decorations ahead of time. Jane and I promised to arrive at 6 p.m. However, 2 days before the shower, the venue contacted Nina. They informed her that stepmother had dropped off large heavy boxes, calling them a little surprise for us. She told them she planned to arrive at 3:30 p.m. to start setting up. The venue was calling to reiterate that the space was only booked after 4 p.m., which had nearly caused stepmother to throw a fit. Since all the decor was still at Nina's place, she called Laura to check if they had left anything with stepmother. Thankfully, my sister is both clever and familiar with stepmother's antics, so she drove to the venue the next day to inspect the boxes. She told me she was not even surprised by the contents but was still taken aback by stepmother's boldness. The boxes were filled with pink frilly decorations, many of which seemed to be the exact items stepmother had initially shown Laura and Nina. Signs, balloons, placemats, and everything else. Laura realized that stepmother's intention was to arrive early to set up her vision of the baby shower, essentially forcing us all into her version of a Barbie hell. She called Nina to figure out a plan. Neither of them could come at 4 p.m., making it almost certain that stepmother would get her way. The most obvious solution was to throw everything away, but Laura had a better idea. That night they called me and Jane and asked, "Hey, want to destroy a party in 2 hours?" Laura got home and invited SM to go to a salon with her, lying about having coupons. SM agreed and they planned on going right after SM was done preparing the baby shower at 4 p.m. The next day SM got to the venue, was done setting things up by 5 thou. I'll admit the woman is fast, and quickly left to meet Laura at the salon. Once they were together, Laura texted Nina that the coast was clear. At that point, Jane, Nina and I went to the venue. Sure enough, SM had prepared her party. To make this shorter, I won't describe it, but I will say it was so pink it almost gave Jane nausea. For the next 2 hours, Laura distracted SM at the salon while the three of us quickly took down every piece of decor SM had put up and replaced it with the pizza party stuff. We set up the activities, made up the tables, and put every pink item we found back in SM's boxes. It was actually really fun. We were done only minutes before the shower started. A handful of guests arrived before SM did, so I barely saw her all night. Laura told me that when they got there, SM's jaw dropped as she tried to make sense of what had happened to all her pink decor. My sister just smiled, whispered "nice try" in her ear, and went to help Luke customize a bodysuit. Overall, the baby shower was everything we'd hoped for. Our friends were there, people had fun, and we had a ton of pizza, so I didn't really care that SM spent the whole party literally sulking in the corner. Nina did catch her trying to put little pink bows on top of the cupcakes, but she quickly shut that down. I give Laura and Nina full credit for saving the day. SM's interest in our baby quickly died after that. She stopped wearing her Nana shirts, didn't come to see us at the hospital when he was born, and refused to even acknowledge that he was a boy until she met him weeks later. Up until we went NC, she was a very loose definition of the word grandmother. I couldn't be more grateful my son will never know her. Edit. The baby shower was at 7 p.m. because it was the only time that worked for everyone. That included the venue because it was booked for the morning and we needed time to set things up. Luke was the only small child there, all the others were at least 9. Most of the parents there left early on too. Also, though it wasn't child-free and we were prepared for everyone we'd invited, not everyone on the guest list was able to come. Update 4. The stepmother is out of our lives, and I believe it is for good. After being engaged for over 2 years, Jane and I finally got married last Saturday. We are still adjusting to calling each other husband and wife, but we are getting there. Fortunately, the wedding was amazing. The children had a great time, our extended families finally met, and we danced so much that I could barely stand the next day. Luke took his role as ring bearer very seriously and held my son's hand as they walked down the aisle. Apart from my aunt getting heavily intoxicated and needing to be escorted out in a wheelchair, which I anticipated, everything went according to plan. It has been 4 months since we obtained the restraining order against stepmother. Things have been mostly peaceful, and I wouldn't have it any other way, though completely quiet would be ideal, but we can't always get what we want. I never really worried about stepmother showing up at the wedding, especially after the restraining order. It is literally illegal for her to come near us, and we made it very clear that if she tried, we would call the police immediately. My friends still advised me to take safety measures, most of which I did. Stepmother did not show up, of course, but I firmly believe that any money spent on security is well worth it, so no regrets on that end. My stepbrother and I wished each other happy birthdays, and he also texted Jane on her birthday back in June. That is the only contact we have had during these months. He knows that the door is still open if he wants to apologize. My father has given up on trying to reach me. We have not spoken since April. He is still trying to talk to my sister for some reason, but she is ignoring him. A few days after she went no contact with him, they had a huge fight over the phone about stepmother's treatment of us over the years. Insults were exchanged, sensitive topics were brought up, and most importantly, my father took stepmother's side on almost everything. My sister called me crying afterward. I wanted to call him and yell at him, but she told me not to. She is doing okay now. She has not blocked him but does not take his calls or answer his texts. She has only received 3. A weak apology, one on my birthday back in May, and a long rant after neither of us wished him a happy Father's Day. After all, despite our differences, he's still our father. He's not wrong. I love my father, and I always will. But I can't be around him anymore. While I've closed that door, I'm not locking it just yet. He knows what he needs to do if he wants his family back. I don't think he'll do it, but if there's the slightest chance he might, I'll consider opening the door an inch or two. This is my wife's suggestion. I'm a lot less optimistic than she is, but maybe it's important to hold on to that hope. She hasn't forgiven him though, or SM. Jane has always been very protective of Luke, so it was no surprise that this disaster shook her. A part of me was scared she'd blame me, but she called me a dumbass when I told her that. I've been in therapy for a few months and it's helped a lot more than I thought it would. I've realized SM's behavior around me growing up was a lot worse than I always thought, and it's great to finally be able to get my feelings off my chest. Right now, I'm more than happy. I just married the most amazing woman ever, and I have the family I always dreamed of. None of us are perfect, but I never thought life would be this great to me. I'll stick around Reddit, it's a lot more than I expected, but I can sleep peacefully now, so it's safe to say this will be my last update on this. Thank you all for the kindness and advice you gave me these months. I could have never expected the support I got from you guys, and I can't begin to describe how helpful it was. Seriously, thank you all. Edit. Okay. I updated too soon. I didn't want to write another post, so I'll just add this here. My stepbrother called me earlier today. Apparently he and SM had a fight, and he wants to meet up. I agreed as long as it was just the two of us. We're meeting up for coffee on Wednesday. I have no idea what to expect, but even if he does apologize, I need to know he understands how and why he let us down. Edit 2. I rescheduled the meetup with my stepbrother. With Jane and I leaving for our honeymoon on Friday, I decided that regardless of how the conversation with him went, I did not want to spend the entire trip thinking about it. He understood, and we agreed to talk when I returned. Final update. Stepmother and stepbrother. Hello everyone, I have been away from Reddit for a few months due to work, but many people have been messaging me about my stepbrother, so I want to provide a brief update. I have been quite busy and tired lately, so I might miss some details. Feel free to ask me anything. I first met my stepbrother for coffee back in August. He had a fight with stepmother, and the restraining order came up. She had lied to him about several details, accusing Luke of bullying my baby, bad-mouthing Jane, and more. However, this time he managed to get her to tell him the truth. After talking to his therapist and friends, and reflecting on his upbringing, my stepbrother started to reevaluate his relationship with his mother. He finally accepted that I was not exaggerating about what she did to Luke. He wanted to talk to me back in June but did not want to distract Jane and me from the wedding. Over the past 4 months my stepbrother and I have been working on rebuilding our relationship. We have been meeting for coffee or lunch and discussing his mother, her impact on our lives, and her treatment of my children. Jane started joining us in October, and the kids saw him again for the first time 2 weeks ago. Things were awkward between us for a while but we are in a good place now. He is also making amends with my sister. In early November, he completely cut contact with stepmother. Jane and the kids are doing amazing. Luke turned 5 in September and our baby will be 2 in early February. We're spending the holidays with Jane's family in Brazil, while my stepbrother stays with his girlfriend. Things are great. That's all. I'm signing off for now. I'll let you know if anything happens. Happy holidays everyone. Best wishes to all of you.
I feel unsafe because my autistic neighbor exhibits strange behavior. He constantly follows me when I take my dog outside at night. Hi all, I've never posted here before but I've been thinking about writing this for a while now, since I'm really starting to feel uncomfortable and could really use some advice for who to contact and what to do. I 23F live in student housing as a graduate student. I have my own apartment in a small multifamily complex. There are about 4 other students there, one of which I will refer to as S, 45M. S has autism. I know these terms are outdated, but for context, his autism is rather profound, and he has lots of social difficulties and stims in conversation. I previously haven't had any real difficulties interacting with him, especially since I used to be an instructor for children with autism and am used to handling various social behaviors from people on the spectrum. But in the past couple of months, his behavior towards me has changed, and I'm at a loss for what to do. I take my dog out at various times throughout the night to relieve herself. There is only one way out of the complex, and I have to pass by S's apartment in order to do this. But after living here for about 6 months, I didn't have any trouble with this. Sometimes, he'd come out to say hi, and I'd let him pet my dog. But this was always at an appropriate time. About a month and a half ago, things started to get weird when I took my dog out at 4:30 a.m., which isn't unusual, and saw him peeking at me through the window. He then opened the door and came outside to sit down and pet my dog. She started barking and I politely told him that I can't have her barking at this time of night and took her inside. I'll admit I felt a bit uncomfortable with him coming out so late at night. After all, he is a large older man and I'm a very small female. For the next month, I would notice S lingering outside the apartments a lot more often. I found it disconcerting when he was doing this late at night. My partner, 20F, came to visit for a month, and while she was there, his behavior got even stranger. Nearly every time I took my dog outside, he would open his door and come out to talk to me, which made me uncomfortable because it seemed he was actively watching for me. But when I asked my partner to come out with me, he would open the door, see her with me, and then close the door without a word. It got to the point where I no longer wanted to take my dog out alone and eventually put up a security camera for peace of mind. The day my security package was actually delivered, my partner was up having a school Zoom meeting in my kitchen, while I slept. Apparently, during the meeting, she started to hear him yell my name outside my door, followed by, "Package." And she ignored it, but it went on for several minutes. This made me really nervous to hear about, and after I put the camera up the behavior slowed. But the other day, my partner went back to her home state again, and S's behavior changed again. He came up to me on the way back from doing laundry in our shared laundry room and asked me if I was a lesbian. I was kind of taken aback, but figured since he has autism, he doesn't really understand if a question is inappropriate. But 2 days later, it got worse. I was taking my garbage out, and there's a small alley between our apartments and the dumpsters. There is only one way in or out. It was nearly midnight and I checked the cameras first to ensure I was alone before going out, but when I turned around, he was standing in the alley, nearly blocking my way out. He looked on the verge of tears. I awkwardly said hi and stepped around him so I wouldn't be cornered in the alley, and he started confessing a variety of emotional and family problems to me. I could see he was having a hard time, so I was polite and answered him and advised him to see a therapist if he needed someone to talk to. He then said something odd to me about not having a partner and how he wanted one really badly, not to put me on the spot, and mentioned he knew about my current partner. Of course, now I think I see why he's been acting so strange towards me. Here's the thing though. He's still following me outside when I take my dog out, and sometimes will just stand there quietly and watch if I'm not engaging with the conversations he's trying to start. I have started carrying pepper spray and will admit I'm feeling very concerned for my safety. My mom says it's a harmless crush and I should just politely tell him to stop cornering me, but I don't know how to safely have this conversation, just in case I may actually be in danger, and I don't feel comfortable doing so. Any advice on what I should tell him to make him understand his behavior is making me feel unsafe? Should I even tell him? Even though he has autism, I feel like he should know not to corner me in an alley at midnight. My school does not have many people working during the summer, and I'm not sure who I should report this to, if I do. Several people close to me who have met him, including someone who is also on the autism spectrum, are telling me to not confront him and just report this behavior. But again, my parents just say his autism is making it difficult to understand that his sudden change in behavior is off-putting, and he's getting over a harmless crush. Either way, I feel unsafe at times, and I want to hear some advice from you guys as to what I should do. Advice from anyone on the spectrum would be especially appreciated, since I want to know if maybe I'm just misinterpreting his challenged social skills as something more concerning. Thank you so much. Update. Thank you all for the replies. You guys are so helpful and have helped me realize the danger I'm in. I want to believe this is the best case scenario, where he just doesn't realize his behavior is inappropriate. Logically, this is the most likely case, but I have to base my actions around a worst case scenario. My gut says something is very wrong. You guys are right that I need to listen to that. My safety has to take priority over his feelings, and I will be doing everything I can to avoid interactions with him. This weekend, he hasn't come up to me directly. He has, however, been coming outside at night after 2:30 a.m., searching the yard where I usually take my dog, and then going straight back inside, 2 nights in a row now, as caught multiple times by my camera. Don't know why else he would do this other than to look for me, and this makes me especially unnerved that he's only attempting that approach at night now, as if he's trying to catch me off guard. I called my parents and broke down crying after reading all the comments you guys left in this thread, and they're finally taking me seriously. My mom purchased me a stun gun, which I will not be going outside without. I'm also not leaving the house alone anymore at all, not even to take the trash out. My dog will be accompanying me for everything. I didn't mention it in my previous post, but my dog is a pit bull, and even though she's the sweetest and has never once been aggressive, she is fiercely loyal, and I believe she could do some serious damage if someone attacked me. I also put in contact alarms for my windows and got a better deadbolt for my door, and my partner has also offered to come stay with me to help keep me safe. He has never approached me when I'm not alone. So for everyone who's been concerned for my safety, thank you, and I hope that shows I'm taking serious steps to keep safe. This morning, I submitted a report to the school and explained the situation in depth, including sending them footage from my security camera of him following me and my dog outside late at night. I requested they keep my report anonymous. I asked them to do a mental welfare check on him and connect him with counseling resources. And as some of you have suggested, I'm asking them to call and remind him not to approach people late at night while they're on their own. Those were my only specific requests, but I told them I need intervention, and I need it now. I got a call back within a few hours and learned my case was fortunately assigned to a man who's worked with autistic adults for years prior to transferring to work at the university. So he's very understanding of the situation and why it's so complex, and will be working on connecting us with resources for his mental health and to point out which behaviors are appropriate, inappropriate. I'm hoping this is the best case scenario, and that this intervention will be positive. If it's not, however, then I will be asking the housing department to temporarily move me. I feel much better with the help and communication I'm getting from the school, but I will continue to treat this like I'm in very real danger, because I might be. This post blew up, so I will update it if something more substantial happens. But for now, the situation is reported and you can assume no news is good news. Am I the asshole for telling my friend, who is vegan and doesn't drink, that I'm tired of catering to her choices? My 50F friend Lauren, 46F, is a vegan who doesn't drink. That's awesome, and I have no issue with that. The problem is that she is part of a small group of friends who don't get out very often, but when we do it always has to be limited due to Lauren's choices. We live in an area where our food choices suck to begin with, so having to go to eat where she can be satisfied is very limited. There really isn't much to do otherwise at night. In addition, she gets upset when any one of us eats something that has an obvious meat to it. For example, she doesn't say anything if we get a soup with chicken or something, but if we ordered a hamburger she would cause drama. Then she doesn't drink, which is no big deal, but she will then send us videos on the harmful effects of alcohol if we get a drink or two with dinner. It has gotten on my nerves to say the least. It's been a while now, so I am done with everyone catering to her needs. I have tried inviting everyone to specific places and invited Lauren as well. Then she puts into a group chat, "Hey ladies, since I can't eat at X, why don't we go to Y?" Then of course the other ones decide we should go to Y instead. I have backed off of going out because I don't want to spend money on food that sucks. Remember, it's vegan, not vegetarian, so it's very limiting. And is expensive, or have my intelligence questioned by sending shit about the effects of alcohol as if we are not beyond old enough to know or Google it. I barely drink anyway, but enjoy a glass or two every so often. She asked why I keep bailing, so I told her I respect your choices, but by the very nature of them they have limited mine. Being that I don't have the ability to go out often nor unlimited funds, I am only going to go when I know the entire experience will be what I want. So if I'm in the mood for a steak and a vodka tonic, I want to have them in a relaxed atmosphere, and that obviously bugs you. If I'm in the mood for a salad and water, I will gladly join you, or we can just hang out at the beach when we have time during the day. She didn't like that too much. She said that isn't what friendship is about, and I should enjoy the company enough not to care. I told her that I understood and I would gladly hang out with her when food or drink isn't in question because it's too expensive not to enjoy it. She said that there is nothing else to do around here. Then I asked if it's just about friends. Maybe she can eat first and join us out sometimes, and other times we can go to where she wants. She then told me that she's not going to sit around watching people eat meat. I said, okay, I get it, and you need to get that I'm not catering to your needs each time I'm free to hang out. I later got a text from a mutual friend that Lauren was upset, but she agreed with me because she was tired of the same shit. Of course this friend doesn't like conflict, so just listen to Lauren. So AITA for not wanting to continue to eat food I don't like, or refrain from having a drink or two to keep the peace here, or am I right in feeling like she's being selfish, expecting the rest of us to do what she's comfortable with each time? Relevant comments. Comment 1, NTA, but drop the friends that don't like conflict. Why surround yourself with spineless morons? OP, true, it was all getting on my nerves and why I was happy not going anymore. However, I sometimes wonder if I'm an asshole when others just easily bend to other people. I appreciate that. Comment 2, NTA, Lauren is an ass though. The condescending comments about meat and alcohol are beyond me. OP, the alcohol really pissed me off. It was such a self-righteous type of behavior to me. Comment 3, NTA. She's exactly right, that isn't what friendship is about, and so why can't she enjoy hanging out with her friends who are allowed to eat and drink whatever they want, while she eats and drinks what she wants? I'm sorry, there's probably not a great ending here, but the way she's framed the situation can easily be turned around back on her, so she's not right. Neither is she wrong. It just may be that you two are incompatible as friends. OP, yes, I'm feeling we are not a good fit. To be honest, I am working hard on setting boundaries, but sometimes I question if I'm not going overboard, especially when many other women my age seem to just go along with something. I felt like she was being extremely selfish, but thought I could be missing something, and why I asked. OP on if she had a problem with Lauren being a vegan and doesn't drink. OP, no. The problem is that I'm expected to become a vegan and not drink in her presence. I don't care what she does, but she cares what I do and the other women as well. OP on the food choices in the area. OP, nice try. I live in a small beach town. There is shitty food to begin with, so the options are extremely limited here. So I can't tell you how many salads I have been limited to eating while going out with her. There are no solely vegan restaurants and very few that have vegan options. She doesn't make it worthwhile to listen to negativity to get what you actually want, so that leaves fucking salad. So just because you misinterpret what I meant or assume the worst in people doesn't mean you're right. Fucking fame? Seriously. Damn. I thought my life was pretty lame just asking this question, and to think someone thinks I'd actually make this shit up. FFS. Update. Thank you so much to the countless people who commented on my post shown below. You made me realize that I wasn't an AH and shouldn't have put up with her BS. Many asked how I put up with it for so long. I don't have a good answer, but it was more about the group itself, where I didn't want to create drama. My experience with friends has been lucky, as most everyone has been loving, fun and selfless. We can also call each other out on BS by busting chops and laughing. This was my first group who met semi-regularly, and the others were very sweet to where I felt uncomfortable rocking the boat. Anyway, yesterday it was a bazillion degrees out here in Florida, and I was playing tennis with Lauren and 2 others. We were dying. I don't normally play with her, but these women are all on my team I joined coming up in the fall, so we needed to start practicing. No, I did not join because of Lauren. LOL. I've played against the other 2 throughout the years, and they have been asking for me to play for a long time now. I live in a small area, so it's common for circles to mix like this. One of the ladies had to stop due to dizziness, cramping and nausea. We all decided that we should only play much earlier in the summer. Except of course Lauren, who didn't want to wake up early because she said she didn't play well then. That's when I had it. With the power of thousands of random Reddit strangers in my head, I basically told her off. I told her I've never met someone so self-absorbed in my entire life, and it was disgusting that she would even think that way in front of a teammate who clearly had heat exhaustion, let alone have it come out of her mouth. I said all this while her ass was sitting down, while the other woman and I got a cold wet towel for this woman and got her to drink. Lauren stormed off. These other two thanked me. One was her usual partner, who is the sweetest person alive and said she has been wanting to tell her off for a year now. The other one, who was feeling like shit, said she is going to tell the captain that she needs to go because she is like a cancer on the team. I am very happy to say that I will not be dealing with her selfish BS any longer. She can go shove a carrot up her ass for all I care. LOL, thanks so much everyone. Tonight I'm going to have a giant hamburger and a cold beverage in your honor. Cheers. Relevant comments. OP not respecting Lauren's wishes and trying to make this whole thing about herself and not Lauren. OP, I did say something and suggested other things. She wasn't having it. I wasn't pouting. We are busy and have lives, so this isn't the end of the world, and I was quite happy with that choice. I kindly told her my feelings and she told me I wasn't being a good friend because it isn't about the food. So then why do we have to eat her shit every time then? I wasn't hurt over the videos. It was fucked up to cross others' boundaries like that, as she was some self-righteous queen of health. She's controlling, as thousands have pointed out. That should be clear with her not budging on playing in the mornings after her teammate got sick from the heat. I spoke with her already calmly and nicely. She never budged and only expected me to continue to bend to her needs, inferring I was not a good friend. I still ended that conversation in a respectful manner to then learn she goes to a mutual friend to bitch about me. It was after the above that I felt she was extremely selfish, but I still wasn't sure because she turned it around on me. That's why I came here to Reddit. I didn't go off on her about the food. I went off on her because there was a woman about to throw up due to extreme heat. While another woman and myself were trying to cool her down and make sure she was okay, Lauren made it again about her. She sat there bitching about not wanting to play earlier because she doesn't play well early in the morning. BTW, that is complete bullshit because the matches start early in the mornings and she's played in this league for many years. I'm sorry, but you must be extremely infuriating to anyone who needs your help and needs you to listen. You fill in gaps to stories that don't exist. You assume what people are feeling and why they have done certain things and then come across in a very pompous manner that you are correct. Yes, you're absolutely correct to the shit you literally made up in your head. However, you are very far off from what happened with me, how I felt and why I acted the way I did.
I have had enough of my stepdaughter, so I moved back to my parents with my son. I'm also 8W pregnant and I don't know what to do. Update. Hi everyone. I don't know if this is even ethical because it's about a minor. I will keep it anonymous and hope for the best. I am at the end of my tether here and I feel paralyzed and in desperate need of advice. I, female 38, met my husband, male 44, about 4 years ago. I'm 8 weeks pregnant, only husband and I know. I have a son, male 8, with my BF who passed away in a car accident before my son was born. My husband has a daughter, female 13, stepdaughter for stepdaughter, from a previous marriage. My stepdaughter lives with us every other week. When we got married, my ex-wife tried everything to get full custody of stepdaughter and failed. But it was made very clear to me, by stepdaughter, ex-wife and husband, that I am not her mother and am not allowed to participate in raising her. Stepdaughter basically ignored me and my son for weeks. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't hurting anyone directly. My son learned very early not to cross stepdaughter and kept to himself when she was around. I suspected the ex-wife behind stepdaughter's coldness towards me and thought this must be hard for stepdaughter with all these changes. I tried to befriend her over the years, but she wasn't having it. It got worse when my ex-wife remarried and got pregnant with twins 2 years ago. She started ignoring stepdaughter, trying to get my husband to have her more, we happily obliged, and basically stopped being a mother to her. It didn't help either that the new husband didn't like stepdaughter and wasn't shy about not wanting to raise another man's daughter. I asked my husband if we could take stepdaughter full time and try to raise her because I saw that her mental health was deteriorating and that she needed stability. The ex-wife blatantly refused this suggestion, so we continued with it every other week. The twins were born about a year ago and all went downhill from there. It seemed like the worse stepdaughter had it at her mom's, the more she hated me and my son. She would throw fits a couple of times every time she's with us. Break our stuff. Call me a bitch if I tried to tell her off. It's her house because her father bought it and we're just guests. She would yell at my son and she even hit him a couple of times, telling him to keep to his room if he didn't like her treatment of him. When I told her not to put her hand on my son, she told me, "What are you going to do about it?" My son grew fearful of her and would ask me to take him to Grandpa, late BF's father, when she's living with us. I talked to my husband about it. I told him stepdaughter needed professional help because she's not feeling well and she's making us miserable when she's around. So she started to go to therapy. 6 months now. Other than that, my husband didn't know what to do either. If he tried to talk to her about being nice to us, she played innocent and told him she was playing around and hugged and kissed my son in front of him. And if he tried to be stern, She threw a tantrum and accused him of loving my son more than her. 3 months ago, my son's grandpa passed away. This hit my son and me very hard. My son was inconsolable for many weeks and couldn't really understand what it meant that he couldn't see grandpa again. Grandpa was a carpenter, so was my late BF. So from a very young age my son loved hanging with him in the garage, working. Many times when he's there he comes home with something they made together. Butter knives, boxes, chessboards. And for my 38th birthday last summer I got a stool that my son designed himself and built with his grandpa and then painted. This was the last project they had together since grandpa passed away a few weeks later, so the stool was priceless to us. We had it in the kitchen. The stepdaughter made a lot of negative remarks about the stool, how ugly and poorly made it was. She laughed at my son's poor taste and he was very distraught. This was the first time, however, that my husband got very angry at her and asked her to go to her room. She was so scared of his reaction that she went without any protest. This Christmas, my stepdaughter was supposed to be with her mother. On Christmas Eve her mother dropped her off at our house very early in the morning. Her new husband had decided he didn't want her to go with them to his parents' house, where they usually spend Christmas. The stepdaughter was on the verge of tears standing there listening to her mother making excuses to my husband and me. My husband hugged stepdaughter the whole time and I tried to fight away my tears. After her mom left, she went upstairs to her room to sleep. I also went to sleep since we don't usually wake up this early on holidays. When she saw me, she smirked and said she didn't want ugly furniture in her house. I pulled her away and told her to go to her room and tried to get the pieces of wood out of the fireplace. That was when she threw a scalding hot liquid in my face. It was hot cocoa. I yelled in pain and my son started panicking, so I ran to him to tell him that I was fine. The stepdaughter stood there laughing. I took my son upstairs and went back to her. I grabbed her hard in her arm and started pulling, pushing and dragging her up to her room and locked the door. Husband came home with my parents moments later. My mom took me to the emergency room and my son insisted on coming with me. I had second-degree burns on my cheek and neck. When I went home my husband was so mad at me for assaulting stepdaughter by using force to get her to her room. He told me I should have had compassion knowing how hurt she was by her mother's abandonment. I told him that I have had enough with this. I am living a nightmare 1 or 2 of my life. Having to go on eggshells in my own home whenever she's around. My son is a prisoner in his own room when she's living with us, too terrified to cross a boundary of hers. I told him that I didn't know how to handle this, and that it was a mistake from the beginning that I wasn't allowed to be a parental figure in her life with authority. He disagreed and told me that she has a kind heart and needed patience. But the thing is, I don't think she does. She targeted my son's handiwork, fully aware of its sentimental value. And my face because she always hated the fact that my husband thinks I am beautiful and is open with complimenting my eyes and smile. I didn't stay there for Christmas. I took my son and parents and went to my parents' home where I live now. My husband is in panic mode. He's been texting and calling me all the time trying to get me to move back and work things out. Stepdaughter even texted apologizing, he probably made her. But I don't know what to do. I love him so much, but I'm ashamed to say that I hate that girl. My son starts hyperventilating of the thought of living with her again. And what about my unborn baby? I feel sick of the thought of having 1-2 custody, and being at the mercy of his half-sister when it's my husband's week. This thought makes me want to have an abortion. Please tell me if there's another solution to this hell I'm living. Update. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the holidays. I'm overwhelmed with the support I received from you. It helped a lot. I was literally losing my mind and wasn't sure if it was wise of me to take these drastic measures. I'm sorry I didn't make an update. I just didn't think I had anything to add, plus these last weeks have been so hard. But I came here now to tell you that I have moved on with my plans. It's just hard for me to talk about it since it was a planned pregnancy and both soon-to-be ex and I were longing for him, her. It was also hard to see my soon-to-be ex broken over my decision. He thinks I have acted so fast and can't fathom how I could just throw away our life together so fast. I think he still doesn't realize the severity of stepdaughter's actions. He even had her with him when he visited me at my parents' house the first time. He wanted us to have a sit-down. When I saw her in the car, I immediately told him to drive back. He was shocked, however, when he saw the dark scars on my face. They'll fade away with time according to the doctor. I can't help but blame myself though. It's my fault that he thought this was a sudden decision. Had I been more honest and open with him, he would have known this was hurting me and my boy for months now, years really. This blame will lie with me and me alone. I thought by keeping my mouth shut I would minimize the damage. How wrong I was. My stepdaughter is living with her grandparents full time now and I think it's going to be a permanent thing. Her stepdad is adamant about not having her around his children. I think this is so messed up on so many levels, but I don't know if I have a say in this. It's her parents' call even if I think it a grievous mistake. And I can't say that I care either. My boy is doing better. He loves living with my parents. He knows he will have to change schools and he's so scared about it, but he still thinks it's great that we moved. We started therapy. In one session the therapist tried to explain to him how stepdaughter is not feeling well, and that she needed help. He got upset and told the therapist he didn't agree with her. He told her stepdaughter isn't the only one hurting. Many kids have bad parents and that he never knew his father and lost people he loved, but still he wasn't mean to his family. I cried for days after this. I am so sorry for what I put him through. I just want to spend the rest of my life making it up to him. My beautiful baby. With Omicron we're back to working from home, so it really doesn't matter that I live 5h from work. I work in a bank and I have talked to my boss. She will help me apply to a nearer office. I think I have covered everything. If anything major happens I will make a new update. Thank you again for the support. You helped more than you can imagine. Ciao edit. We have rebuilt the stool. We couldn't make it perfect and we had to patch it in many places and repaint it. But we love it. Some explanation from OP. I'm sorry I haven't been able to answer all your questions. I wrote my update very late and went to sleep. When I woke up it was locked. I will try to answer some here soon to be ex. And his ex got divorced because the ex cheated on him. Her relationship with the affair partner. Didn't last. An affair partner left her when they got busted. This happened way before soon to be ex and I met. But the resentment came from soon to be ex. Moving on. From what I understood, soon to be ex and his ex were planning to give their relationship a second chance right before I met him, and he allegedly changed his mind. He blatantly denies this, but I've heard it from his ex and even stepdaughter. I know I was harsh on the stepdad, simply because I don't think him to be a good human being. His reluctance towards stepdaughter started way before the twins, and even before they got married he made it clear he would prefer it if stepdaughter didn't live with them. He even tried not to have her at their wedding. But after the incident, I don't blame him, even though I know he was happy he got a reason to get rid of her now. The problem is that stepdaughter loves him and the twins. She never speaks ill about him and always praises him. When she felt hurt by them, her hatred for me increased instead. I don't know how to explain it, but I kind of understood her. My soon-to-be ex isn't an evil man. He's probably a bad parent, but I don't think he is malicious. He knew his daughter was hurting and his solution was to spoil her when she stayed with us. It didn't help either that stepdaughter saw that he loved my son and treated him well. She always accused him of favoritism, and that drove him to spoil her even more to prove that she's his first priority. A vicious circle. On the morning of Christmas Eve when my stepdaughter was dumped at our doorstep, soon-to-be ex cried after she went to bed and felt hopeless. I think that's why he couldn't understand the severity of what she did. She had bruises from where I dragged her to her room. Getting mad would probably have been my first reaction if I didn't know the full story and my child was bruised by an adult. I'm not trying to defend him. I'm trying to understand why he reacted like he did. About my stepdaughter moving with her grandparents. I think soon-to-be ex, even though he doesn't want to admit it, is repulsed by her run. It's so sickening, but I don't think he can help it. He feels terrible about the termination, and he's on sick leave now. This is so hard for me to write, but I think this is the brutal truth. I have promised myself not to get involved or utter an opinion about this matter to him or anybody else. She's not my responsibility, and maybe it's for the best because her grandparents are decent people. Even though I don't know, more feelings of abandonment is what stepdaughter needs. I don't think she's a psychopath. She has feelings, and a lot of them, especially rage. I don't think she's faking her rage. It feels very genuine. Many accused me of being a bad mom who only reacted when I personally was assaulted. I will have to live with this guilt and make it up to my boy for the rest of my life. These few weeks have been so dark. I keep thinking that she would have hurt my son with the hot drink instead of me, and I wouldn't have had the time to prevent it because it went so fast. I can't stop beating myself up about it, and I probably deserve it. My only defense is that her violence escalated very quickly and after the twins were born. Before that I deemed the situation to be manageable. I was wrong, and I'm so sorry I let it go for so long. I don't feel well. The termination was so hard on me because I loved and wanted the baby. This has nothing to do with my political views or beliefs. I don't live in the US or any other religious country. Where I live, abortion is a basic human right and not a political view. It was hard for me because I have longed for a baby. Please stop abusing me in the chat, calling me a murderer and whatnot, or at least do it here and not hide in the private chat. I'm going to live with my parents for a while now, even after we settle the economy and separate our finances. I feel like it's good for us. ATM. My son is so happy with them even if he misses soon-to-be ex. He knows if he chose soon-to-be ex. It meant stepdaughter too, so he's trying to adjust to a life without his dad. We're getting a dog. He has always wanted one but couldn't because stepdaughter is allergic. I hope this answered all your questions, and thank you again for the support. Relevant comments. Commenter. OP mentioned soon-to-be ex. Feeling unwell right after mentioning pregnancy termination. My speculation would be just some negative feelings or depression about losing the prospect of losing an unborn child and correlating the cause to be his daughter, and particularly the burns she caused to OP, which he got to see the scars caused by it as a surprise when visiting her. I am assuming OP's injuries were bandaged up when she came home from the ER, and was confronted by OP and had no idea about the severity. Seems like things went from blissful ignorance to shocking realization of the current state of things around him. Some sort of a breakdown. From his life going from being married with child, stepchild, plus unborn child on the way. No more marriage. Stepchild is gone along with the wife. Discovery that bio-daughter was violent towards wife and stepson, which resulted in wife getting second-degree burns and scars on neck, face, and that ended up being the direct cause of termination of unborn child. Pretty much went from thinking he's got a near-perfect life to where did everyone go in the span of a single day. Commenter. I'd like to hear more about why stepdaughter is with her grandparents rather than father. All we have is conjecture. Understandable that we won't get an answer if OP has completely broken it off with him. Which it sounds like she has and is certainly for the best.
Am I the asshole for putting my profoundly autistic daughter on birth control without her consent to alleviate her painful and confusing menstrual cycles? I, 45F, have a daughter, 19F, Layla, who is profoundly autistic. She was diagnosed as a young child, and due to the efforts of her speech and OT, and her own hard work, she has been able to gain a lot of independent daily living skills over the years. As she started hitting the teenage years, though, we started facing an extreme struggle with her period. Due to her diagnosis, she is estimated to have the developmental age of a 3 or 4-year-old child. This makes her month cycle extremely painful and confusing for her. She does not know or understand why she is bleeding or in pain. She suffers from bad cramping, which is difficult to treat as she has a hard time communicating when she is in pain. Aside from the pain, the hygienic side of her cycle is very difficult for both her and me. Due to the painful nature of her cycle, keeping things consistently clean is extremely hard as there is a negative association there, and she does everything she can to avoid dealing with her period. After trying different OT therapists and plans, both me and her father, her OT therapist and her pediatrician have decided the best thing for her is to be put on birth control so her cycles can be managed. We safely have her skip the majority of her cycles during the year, and it has been a blessing for us. It has been 4 months, and not only has she been able to avoid the pain she goes through every month, but her general mood and demeanor has improved as well. Her therapist believes her irregular cycle was causing her a lot of anxiety. The issue comes with my Sile Ashley. She was over at the house yesterday having lunch with us when she asked how Layla had been doing recently. I told her that she was doing very well and explained to her the changes we made in the last few months. Ashley was horrified. She started ranting about how I am taking away my daughter's autonomy by putting her on birth control without her consent, and that the long-term effects could hurt her fertility. Layla will never have children, and will never have an intimate relationship with others due to her developmental age. I tried explaining this to Sil, but she held firm. I honestly don't know if she has a very good grasp on autism or developmental disorders at this point. I ended up asking her to leave as she was getting louder and I didn't want her to upset Layla. I let my husband know what had happened when he got home from work. Layla had already texted him trying to shame him for allowing Layla to be put on birth control. She has now involved my MIL and has even reached out to my own mother over Facebook, claiming my husband and I are taking away our daughter's autonomy. I really think that birth control was the right choice for our daughter, but the constant barrage of insults is starting to make me question things. Am I the asshole? I was excited to meet my sister's wife, but she was cold and unfriendly. She avoids talking to me but was happy and chatty with others. December 17, 2017. Using a throwaway account for privacy, sorry if this gets long. My sister, a lesbian, married her wife a year ago. They get financial support from our wealthy and generous parents, have good jobs, and have decided to have a baby. Her wife is visiting for the holidays and is about 6 months pregnant. Since I'm in college, I don't get to see them very often, but my parents help me out financially, so it's fair. I'm eagerly looking forward to meeting their new baby. My sister and her wife have been together since their senior year of college and were friends since childhood. I'm 7 years younger, so I was kind of out of the loop. I didn't really get to know my sister's wife until they got married, and even then, I was busy with my first year of college. I was really looking forward to this trip to spend some one-on-one time with her. Our parents live about 2 hours from my sister and her wife, and I flew in from across the country. We're all staying with our parents, who are not yet retired. My flight got in late last night, so I slept in. My parents went to work, My sister went shopping, and my sister-in-law stayed in, but I didn't realize she was around until she came downstairs while I was making lunch. She's obviously pregnant and I haven't seen her since the wedding, so I was really excited to see her. She wasn't. I said hi and went to hug her, but she backed away. I apologized, and she just looked at me weirdly and went through the fridge. I tried to make small talk, asking when she was due. She gave me a weird look like I'd asked something inappropriate, then just said March and kept making her food. I said I was excited to have a niece or nephew and asked if she wanted a boy or girl. She sighed loudly, said she didn't care, and moved on. My sister had mentioned her wife had PTSD from a previous pregnancy, so I thought that might be it. I tried changing the subject and asked about her work. She set her knife down loudly, stared at me for 30 seconds, then said fine, and went to the dining room. Throughout the day, I kept trying to interact with her. I offered to get her a drink. She muttered no. I asked what she was watching. She said, "You wouldn't know it. It was The Simpsons." I said I was glad she was spending the holidays with us. She begrudgingly said, "Yeah." I thought maybe this was just her personality. Then my parents and sister came home, and she was super cheerful and nice to them. My dad asked if they had names picked out, and she wouldn't stop talking. My sister wanted a family name, and her wife wanted a unique name. My mom suggested my name, Aeneas, since it's uncommon but a family name, same as my grandmother. I said I wouldn't mind having a niece with my name, and my sister was enthusiastic. Her wife gave me a death glare. At dinner, I asked if she could pass the potatoes, and she ignored me. I repeated myself and my sister had to tell her. She then giggled and said, "Guess I didn't hear." What should I do? Should I tell my sister or confront her wife directly? I have good relationships with my parents and sister and want to be involved with my niece and nephew, so I don't want to go no contact. How can I resolve this? Too long, didn't read. My sister's pregnant wife is cold and short with me. What should I do? Update, as of this morning. This morning at breakfast, my sister-in-law actually spoke to me, but it wasn't positive. She asked if I was seeing anyone, in a snarky tone. I said no, I'm busy with school. She responded, "Well, not everyone finds someone." My sister changed the subject, asking my parents about their winter home. My sister-in-law was so nice to them, saying how gorgeous the house is and how grateful she was for the vacation she and my sister took there last month. My mom started gushing about her, and it was a mush fest. After breakfast, I took our dogs for a walk. When I came back, my parents and sister had gone shopping, and my sister-in-law was home alone. She asked how I liked college. I said I liked it and started talking about my pre-dental major. She rolled her eyes. I apologized for oversharing and she said, "No, it's fine, you just have a problem with reading the room, I guess." Then she walked away. When my sister comes home, I'm definitely going to tell her about this. OP clarified why her sister-in-law might not like her. There was one incident regarding her wedding that comes to mind. Initially, the wedding was scheduled on the day of my finals, before invitations were produced or mailed. I called my sister to tell her that I either couldn't make it or the date would have to be changed. She was really upset because she and her wife had wanted a winter wedding, and the date seemed perfect for them. I suggested they didn't have to sacrifice the winter aspect, just maybe move it a day back. We had a big fight and I assume my sister-in-law was involved, but my sister, who likes to be liked, didn't want to stay mad at me, so we worked through it. The wedding ended up being the day after my finals, which I was grateful for, and there's been no resentment or hard feelings since. My sister actually laughs at herself now for being kind of unreasonable. Her quote from that time was, "You just don't have to go, it's just a test." I was my sister's maid of honor, and I didn't see much of my sister-in-law prior to the wedding. She'd gotten food poisoning from her bachelorette party, so she was kind of holed up for the majority of the pre-wedding hubbub. During the reception, I made a toast, talked about my sister and her wife's friendship, how we've just been waiting for the two of them to get married, they're a match made in heaven, etc., etc. She teared up, gave me a big hug and said she was excited to be my sister-in-law. I wanted to talk more with her, but some relatives wanted to ask me why I chose the college I did, so I went to go talk to them. I'm probably going to bring this up with my sister either today, or tomorrow. I'll probably bring this up with my sister either today or tomorrow, depending on what my sister-in-law is up to. Highlight comments. Commenter. So you said that the longest time you spent with her was camping, from a previous comment, and the wedding. Could you elaborate on the wedding? Did you interact with her at all? Were you at your sister's bridal party? But I agree with other commenters, you've just got to talk to your sister and/or parents to see what can change to make this better for the rest of your stay. OP, there was one thing I might be able to think of in terms of her wedding. It was initially scheduled on the day of my finals. This was prior to invitations being produced and mailed, just their idea. So I called my sister to tell her I either wouldn't make it or the date would have to be changed. She was really upset about it, because she and her wife had wanted a winter wedding. The date seemed perfect for them, etc. I said they didn't have to sacrifice the winter aspect, just maybe move it a day back. There was a kind of big fight, and I can assume my sister-in-law got in on it, but my sister is the kind of person who likes to be liked. Think of her as a human golden retriever. And she didn't want to be mad at me, so we worked through it. Her wedding ended up being the day after my finals, which I was grateful for, and there's been no resentment or hard feelings since. My sister actually laughs at herself for being kind of an ass. Her choice quote from that time was, "You just don't have to go, it's just a test." I was my sister's maid of honor, and I didn't see much of my sister-in-law prior to the wedding. She'd gotten food poisoning from her bachelorette party, so she was kind of holed up for the majority of the pre-wedding hubbub. During the reception, I made a toast, talked about my sister and her wife's friendship, how we've just been waiting for the two of them to get married, they're a match made in heaven, etc. etc. She teared up, gave me a big hug and said she was excited to be my sister-in-law. I wanted to talk more with her, but some relatives wanted to ask me why I chose the college I did, so I went to go talk to them. I'm probably going to bring this up with my sister either today or tomorrow. It all depends on what my sister-in-law is up to. Commenter. Even if this is the underlying issue, and sister-in-law was annoyed by OP's attempts to make conversation, sister-in-law is still being an asshole. She's 26, old enough to have the self-control to say, "Sorry, OP, I want some time alone right now. I'm not really up for talking." She's allowed to feel irritated, but being pregnant doesn't give her the excuse to be rude without apologizing. My direct advice, OP, is to scale back your interactions with your sister-in-law. You can still be polite. It will highlight the drastic difference between the way you treat her and the way she treats you. Every time you make an effort to be friendly, she mocks you and belittles you. You deserve better, but it's also not your responsibility to earn decent behavior from her. Focus on those who return your friendliness, like your sister and parents. Next time you're home alone with your sister-in-law, try doing solo activities like reading or playing video games to pass the time. Update, recovered through RReddit. December 20th, 2017. So I didn't get the chance to talk to my sister. When my parents came back from shopping with my sister, my mom started saying how she had the perfect onesie for her granddaughter. Before my sister-in-law could start gushing, I asked what my mom meant. She asked if I hadn't heard I'd be having a niece, and I replied I hadn't. My sister said it was weird, because she'd asked her wife to tell me once they'd gotten the ultrasound. Her wife had zero excuse, and had the most deer in the headlights reaction. There was something that just sort of snapped, and I started crying. I felt kind of spoiled and horrible for it, so I apologized, and went upstairs with the dogs. My parents came upstairs, and my mom went to ask if I was okay, and my sister and her wife started shouting downstairs. My mom basically said that my sister-in-law does not like me and that it wasn't really my fault, she's just bad with people she doesn't know, and took it out on me inappropriately. And yes, my sister-in-law was still pissed about the wedding date thing, which just made it worse. I felt really shitty and just like really bad. Part of it wasn't my fault, but part of it was my fault. And apparently my sister knew about both issues beforehand, and had given my sister-in-law directions to try and get along with me. They were still shouting downstairs, and I was kind of bordering on a meltdown, so I asked my mom if we could take the dogs for another walk. We went out the back, and when we came home my sister had left the house to cool down, and her wife was upstairs. I spent most of the rest of the day downstairs, until my sister came home. She had obviously been crying and was in a bad mood. My mom took her into the kitchen to try and calm her down, so I kept sitting in the living room. I felt like a bratty little kid again. Like, I genuinely felt like I'd fucked up my sister's marriage and probably ruined our relationship in the process too. Everything just felt awful. And when my sister came out of the kitchen, she didn't even look at me. Just went storming back upstairs. Her wife started yelling first, and they were fighting for a while before it got quieter upstairs. My mom, dad and I went out for dinner, and when we came home my sister-in-law was waiting for us. My sister-in-law apologized to me, saying she had been petty and rude, and that the wedding date thing had been a non-issue. I said it was okay if she was upset about the wedding thing, but I wish she had let me know. She said it wasn't that easy, since my sister would basically take a bullet for me, and it had caused them a big fight before their wedding. I said I had no idea and that I was sorry to be the source of that tension, and I just wanted to be able to be a good sister-in-law myself and be a good aunt. My sister-in-law got angry, and said I had ruined the opportunity for the first one, and she wasn't banking on the second one. Then she stormed upstairs, and she and my sister got into another big fight. I felt awful. The bad feelings manifested physically, and I spent most of the night throwing up while my sister and her wife fought. My mom was really kind to stay up with me, and my dad tried to get my sister and her wife to get off each other's backs. I specifically heard my sister-in-law shouting, "Who would you jump in front of a train for, me or her?" And my sister responded without missing a beat, "My sister, no questions asked." They got quieter after that, and my sister-in-law started screaming about an hour later saying, "I'd let all my siblings die for you." My sister slept on the couch, and the two of us went out for breakfast in the morning. She basically said that after my sister-in-law gave birth, she and my sister were going to separate. They would try counseling prior to the birth, and afterwards too, but if things weren't getting better, they'd be divorcing. I said that it shouldn't have gotten that far, and I was sorry for pushing both of them. My sister said that my sister-in-law does this to all my sister's friends, and they've been fighting often. But she clarified that the way she treated me was a deal breaker. She said it might have sounded sad, but I was her best friend from birth, and she wouldn't let me not feel welcome like that. I felt really guilty and started crying again. She kept saying she wanted it this way, their relationship was broken as is, etc. It's been tense and awkward ever since. My sister-in-law won't look at me or speak to me, and I've given up. My sister has been by my side a lot, and has amped up the good sister behavior 10x. I feel like shit, everything is really terrible, and I'm sure I'm going to be making another post during the actual Christmas bullshit. Not a great update, but there we are. Too long, didn't read. My sister and her wife are separating because of my sister-in-law's behavior towards me. Spot on comments. Commenter, the sister says her wife treats all her friends that way. Isn't that classic jealous abuser behavior, trying to isolate them from friends? I guess the parents get a pass because they're rich and are giving money. Replier, yeah, that is exactly what I think it is. As the other comment said, she isolated her sister from her friends and tried to isolate her from her sister. She was only being nice to the parents because they are wealthy and she wants to keep her hand in the money pot. Other commenter, hey, sister says her wife treats all her friends that way. Isn't that classic jealous abuser behavior, trying to isolate them from friends? Yes, it absolutely is, as seen time and time again in the posts on this subreddit. Sorry to hijack your comment, but I just want to give a small public service announcement to anyone reading this. If your partner is acting even 1/4 the way that this sister-in-law is acting, then you either need to get out or find some way to shut that shit down as soon as possible. This behavior does not magically go away with time and will only grow as you sit and stay quiet hoping it'll blow over. Remember, for your sake, if your partner is trying to drive a wedge between you and your family or friends, they are planning on making sure you depend solely on them either emotionally and/or financially, so you can't get away from them when you realize and it's become too late. Please make sure to keep some kind of relationship with someone reliable and dependable in your life besides your partner, so you always have an escape in a worst-case scenario. Don't get trapped. My husband abandoned us to see the Grateful Dead's final show, leaving me and the kids broke. I've decided to plan our divorce. Am I the asshole? My husband is a deadhead. His entire identity is built around this band, and he's seen them and their various incarnations over 50 times. Normally I don't mind, but 2 years ago I was in an accident that left me unable to work. I now receive a tiny disability check once a month for it. He works, but it hasn't been easy with the cost of everything skyrocketing. My disability check doesn't even cover the full cost of our rent, even though our rent is the lowest in our area. Long story short, Dead & Company is made up of what remains of the Grateful Dead, and this is supposed to be their last tour. We live on the East Coast, where he's already seen them twice, which was already more than we can afford, but a few days ago he took out a loan and bought tickets to go see their final show in San Francisco, along with round-trip air and hotel and whatever else he needs out there. Me and the kids are left with $10, some pocket change, and what feels like a very big fuck you. School starts back in a month and the kids both need school supplies and clothes. I could name 1,000 things we need, things that we're going without while money is tight, but this is what he chose to do. We're not going to starve over the weekend, but I don't even have enough money to go get them a pizza while their dad is having a blast on the other side of the country and hanging out with his online Deadhead fam. I understand that this band means a lot to him and I tried to be supportive of that, but I feel like he's crossed a line here. He refused to talk about how much all of this is costing us, but when I looked up the cost of concert tickets, flight tickets, hotels, transportation and food, the bare minimum figure I get is still around $1,000. It could very well be and probably is a lot more than that. I've supported him through a lot of things, but this weekend, while he's off having fun and leaving us to fend for ourselves, I'm slowly planning my divorce. I'm playing nice while I get all of my ducks in a row, but this is it for me. I'm tired of watering down essentials like shampoo or laundry soap, living off rice and beans just for him to turn around and take out a loan so he can go to a show all by himself across the country. Edit to say I commented somewhere below to let everyone know the current plan. Apologies if you have to scroll to find it. OP adds an update to a deleted comment. You guys, I wish I had the time to thank you all individually for the overwhelming support I've received here. I really was not expecting that when I posted. Even though I'm dealing with something so fucked up, I feel so much better than I did a few hours ago, knowing there are so many decent and kind people out there, so thank you for that. I mean it. As for everything else, divorce is inevitable. He might not be a total monster, and I'm sure on any other day I would have been able to tell you 1,000 different things that are good about him, but this is a huge betrayal and I just don't see how we're going to come back from that. We're only barely making ends meet now, and this one single selfish act of his leaves us thousands of dollars in the hole overnight. I'm occasionally capable of small miracles, but pulling money I don't have out of my ass isn't one of them. It's the weekend now, so I won't be able to even think about speaking to a lawyer until Monday at the earliest. I wish I could say I'm packing up now, but the reality is I'm stuck here, at least for a little while. The $10 I have in my account doesn't go very far these days. I'll have money again on the 1st, so tomorrow I'll be packing just the essentials, birth certificates and the like, and taking them to my friend's house for safekeeping for now. I'll also be calling my landlord to see about having my name removed from the lease agreement. I'm not going to tell my husband I'm leaving yet though. He's going to come home and tell me what a beautiful experience it was. Tell me how much he wishes I could have been there and how he'll take me one of these days and make it up to me eventually. And I'll smile and play along for the next 2 weeks. I'm not sure where I'm going yet, but I do know I'm not going to pay 3/4 of the rent just to be immediately broke again and have the lights and water and phone all turned off a few days later because he put us in this financial pit. I hope his social media fam are impressed enough by his presence and Instagram stories to make all this worth it to him. I hate it. I can't even begin to explain how hurt and shocked and tired and angry I am. I'm also numb. I don't know how it's possible to feel all this at the same time, but hey, here I am. Thank you though from the bottom of my heart. And for the handful of pecans wringing their hand about me being a leech and sucking the joy out of his life. Keep in mind that I worked from the time I was 16 up until I got hurt, and there were plenty of times throughout this relationship where I was the breadwinner. I provided for him during those times because that's what people in relationships do for one another. I'm very sorry you've never cared enough about someone else or had anyone care about you to understand that. I draw disability now because I paid into a system that was put into place to do for people exactly what it's doing for me right now. Edit. I appreciate the offers, I really do. But if you need to donate to anything, please donate to your local animal shelter or food closet or a needy family in your neighborhood. This blew up way bigger than I thought my rant was worth to anyone, but the kids and I are gonna be okay. We're leaving tonight to stay with a couple of friends. Everything is moving very quickly now, it's sort of surreal. OP updates the original post update. I wasn't expecting I'd need an update already, but he knows. Someone here decided to share my vent elsewhere so he saw it on Facebook. He's angry that I've made him look like an asshole. I told him all I did was talk about it without naming him. And if people decide he's an asshole based on his actions, he's got no one to blame but himself. I'm so nervous, I'm shaking and I feel like I might vomit. Some friends have offered to come help me pack and let me and the boys stay with them until I can figure out something more permanent. Edit. Also, please don't try to send me, or anyone pretending to be me, pretending to collect on my behalf, anything. We're in good hands right now and we're not going to go without. I figured, since this whole thing blew up today, I might as well tell all of my friends what's going on and they've really pulled up for us, so we're definitely going to be okay. Relevant comments. Comment 1, divorce him. He has made it clear he doesn't care about you or your kids. Anyone that's selfish needs to be held accountable and the only way to do that is by leaving him. OP, I'm finally realizing this. He's always been a bit selfish, but usually it's smaller things like buying one of his fam birthday rounds with our last $5. We were already struggling because his last 2 East Coast shows really set us back hard. He missed work for both those shows, but we could have skimmed because he used his PTO for those shows. But not only did he take out a loan for San Fran, he has no PTO left and he's missing 3 days of work, which means his next paycheck is going to be super slim and we'll have a new loan payment to make. I'm expecting this to set us back at least 2 or 3 months, but probably more. The kids go back to school in a month. The youngest had a massive growth spurt and literally none of his clothes fit. He's got a single pair of jeans, 2 pairs of shorts, and I think 5 t-shirts that he can still wear. I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but I'm tired of making all these sacrifices just so he can go do whatever he feels like. Comment 2. That is shockingly bad. He doesn't care if you and his own children are low on food and necessities. If he's gotten this low, who knows what he will do in the future, and you said he's always been selfish. This goes beyond selfishness and I agree with all the other comments about divorce. There's no going back from this. At least that's my opinion. I wouldn't be able to ever see him the same again and I'd be absolutely heartbroken. I'm sorry he did this. Don't let anyone downplay his actions. OP, I keep going back and forth between heartache and rage. We've been together for almost 20 years and I cannot believe he would stoop so low to just leave us like that. Life feels so unreal right now. I have a doc appointment this week that I'm gonna have to call and cancel first thing Monday morning because I don't have the money for it anymore. This is so fucked. It's 8 in the morning and I didn't sleep at all last night worrying about this stuff. I can't wrap my head around it. Update. I was injured in a work-related accident that has severely affected my mobility, and this process has been ridiculously slow, in part because my lawyer told me we needed to know how well I might expect to recover and a slew of other things, and those things require time and doctors. I've been basically guaranteed a fairly large settlement. The problem is I'm planning on filing for divorce tomorrow. I had a fairly solid career before my accident while my husband sorta skipped from job to job. I was fine with that at the time, but I'm on disability now and my husband has made a series of increasingly awful financial decisions that, well, let's just say they're bad and I can't stay married to him anymore. Are either of us entitled to alimony? Will he be entitled to any of this settlement when it comes through? If I collect child support from him, is that going to have any bearing on my other case? I'm calling my attorney and maybe a divorce attorney tomorrow if my current attorney can't do it. Hopefully he can recommend someone, but I don't know how long it'll take to set up a meeting, and I guess I just wanted to ask here first so I'll have some kind of heads up. Married almost 20 years in South Carolina, if that matters. My accident was about 2 years ago. He's never acted as my caretaker or anything because I stayed at my mother's home with our children where she did most of the caretaking when I actually required it. Relevant comments. Comment 1. He shouldn't be, but this is something you should talk to your divorce lawyer about. They'll have far more information and the steps you will need to take to protect yourself and your kids. This is a little above Reddit's pay grade. OP. I'm planning on doing that ASAP. I'm just very nervous and freaking out a little because of course everything blew up over the weekend when all of the offices are closed. 9 a.m. can't get here fast enough. Thank you though. Comment 2. Congrats on moving on. It's never easy. I think that the settlement payment should be separate property if received after the legal separation. Filing date. When you file, you list community assets, debts, and separate property/debts, which include things you had before the marriage and had after the separation. I would think that since you don't have a judgment or payment yet, you should be entitled to that as separate property. OP. Thank you. It's been nerve-wracking and kind of scary. When you file, you list community assets, debts, and separate property/debts, which include things you had before the marriage and had after the separation. This part scares me. A few days ago I found out he'd taken out a loan for personal reasons. I have no idea where or how much it was for. All I know is I didn't get a dime of it. I tried to guesstimate how much he got based on his plans, but I've been told by others that number is likely way off. I'm worried that he's done this before, because while he makes decent money, we've been so broke and barely scraping by. After bills and stuff, he should have at least $500 left over every month, more if he's had any raises since starting, but we can't even afford the basics anymore. So if it turns out he's been getting credit cards or other loans and owes a ton of money without my knowledge, am I on the hook for that? Even if I didn't benefit from it in any way? Comment 3. Unfortunately, most likely the answer is yes. Sign up for a credit monitoring service and run a credit report. Better yet, sign up for 2 accounts, one in his name. You'll be able to see what loans and credit cards are taken out and account payment history and balances. And importantly, lock your credit so he can't take out more cards or loans. You'll have to lock in with all 3 credit score companies. Do this now. My wife made negative comments about our daughters posing for her school photos. Am I the asshole for getting angry at my wife over this? I, 60, have been married to my wife, 51, for around 15 years. We also have a beautiful daughter named Hayoung, 17, who is in her junior year of high school. Yesterday after school, Hayoung, pronounced Hayoung, came up to me and my wife and showed me her school pictures, both her individual photo and her group grade photo. They were taken all the way back in February, but they had just arrived today. I complimented Hayoung and told her how beautiful she looked in the photos, before telling her how proud I was to see her grow up throughout the ages, before showing my wife the pictures of our daughter. It did not go the way I hoped it would go. Instead of looking at it for a bit before saying something, my wife immediately pointed out to Hayoung that she was looking too downward at the camera and that her eyes looked strained/forced. I was a bit taken aback at first, but I decided to just keep listening. My wife then said to my daughter that she would have to have rehearsals for school pictures with her for next year, because in my wife's words, Hayoung still doesn't understand how to properly pose, smile and look beautiful for a school picture. I was a bit irritated, but I let it slide. What set me off though, was my wife then said, Hayoung's picture is a fail. Honestly, Melissa looks the prettiest out of everyone. Hayoung got quiet and said, I'm gonna be honest, my picture this year is really bad compared to sophomore year. I got mad that evening. We had a huge argument in the living room. I told my wife that she was being cruel to our daughter, and since school pictures were over, there was no point being so picky over it. My wife retaliated, saying that, even Hayoung says that she doesn't like how she looks in her school picture. I was just being honest, I'm only trying to help her. She then went into her room and started crying, saying that I don't understand her. I will admit, I raised my voice while we were having that argument, and I'm seriously sitting here questioning myself about whether I was an asshole or not. After our argument, I knocked on Hayoung's door and I could tell by her expression that she had listened to every piece of the argument. I feel bad because I may have overreacted to something as simple as school pictures. Plus, I ruined my daughter's evening and my wife's too, and I also made my wife cry. TLDR, I shouted at my wife after she made some comments about my daughter's school photos, and I'm wondering if I'm the age. Edit 1. This is not the first time my wife has said something like this. This is why I feel even more terrible, because I let my daughter suffer like this. I did give my wife a word or two, but I always told Hayoung that this was just the way she spoke and that she really did love her. I really want to cry right now, especially overhearing Hayoung crying herself to sleep last night. She always kept a brave face around me and my wife, but it just breaks me even more, now knowing she feels like she can't talk to me either. I failed her. Hayoung always asked me every morning if she looked beautiful. She would always ask at meal times if she was eating too much. I'm so afraid of the damage we both put her through for so long. I'm so scared she's going to develop an eating disorder, and I'm going to make sure to set things straight with my wife and take care of my daughter better. She is always my first priority. Edit 2. I was taken off guard even though my wife has made responses like this in the past, because though it's not the first time, I had a little bit of hope left that she wouldn't point out Hayoung's appearance that outright in her school photo. Relevant comments. Commenter, I am guessing based on the fake name that your wife is Korean. I know beauty standards there are super high and she could be projecting her own insecurities and maybe even comments that she got when she was young. Of course this is not okay, but it could be worth sitting down with her and having a talk. OP, you're right, me and my wife are both Korean. The beauty standards there are super tough, so I'm probably going to talk to my wife privately to understand why she said that and check up on Hayoung a bit before talking with my wife. I know she's super shaken up, so the best I can do is be the best father I can. To another commenter. I've lived in the States longer than in Korea now. Commenter, do Korean women tend to have very high beauty maintenance standards? And no, you are not in the wrong. Teenage girls are already extremely sensitive about their looks, so your compliment was kind and nurturing. OP, I cannot speak on the behalf of everyone. I know that the beauty standards are extremely tough there. I've heard people commenting about the fatness, skinniness of people's bodies. I've sometimes heard conversations about K-pop idols' bodies and faces, makeup, surgery, etc. Later that night in comments, hello everyone, OP here. Tonight, since my wife is working a night shift today, I decided I'm going to stay together with Hayoung for a daddy-daughter date. I know it doesn't matter whether we go out or not, all that matters is that I'm with her. I'm planning on making her some of her favorite foods and spending quality time as an apology for not being there when I should have been. She loves japchae, galbi and cream bunjopang. I asked Hayoung beforehand whether she wanted to stay at home or go out, and she wanted to stay home and she chose to go with the first option. I'll let you know how it goes. Update post, July 16, 2024, about 5 weeks later. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their generous comments and advice. As promised, here is the update. After my wife left for work, I decided to check up on my daughter. She was in her room doing homework and I could tell by the forced expression that she was not okay. As she talked, everything began to make sense. My daughter overheard her mother shaming her in front of the other church moms. She heard them boasting about their kids and her mother would use condescending modesty, e.g., she's gained weight and she doesn't even study hard. She was tired of trying to surpass my wife's expectations. She couldn't stand it when my wife was in the house. She asked me, why am I her diamond? She cuts me to make me shine. How more of this should I take? I prepared all the foods I promised to make and she was hesitant but ate a lot more than when my wife was around. She wanted to further talk with me. I then asked if she wanted me to tell my wife how she felt. Hayoung said, it was the only way to get her to listen, before telling me she wants me to get a divorce. I asked her if she was absolutely sure, as it was something very serious. She said she was fine with it. I'm just devastated it has reached this point. When Hayoung was at school, I had a conversation with my wife. I brought up Hayoung's concerns, along with mine. I asked my wife what made her put down my daughter on the day of the school picture incident. She made excuses such as having bad days, hence she'd accidentally release her anger and other emotions by yelling, the silent treatment, etc. I questioned further if there was anything in the past that was bothering her, which she replied snarkily, nothing is bothering me. I raised her into a better person. If you have problems with how I'm raising her, she's all yours. I don't want to argue anymore, especially with a sensitive, lazy person like you. We had a lot of arguments in the past on raising Hayoung. This phrase was used in all of our arguments to shut me up. As Hayoung was consistently used as an emotional punching bag and a trophy for my wife, this was the last straw. I told my wife, we were done, then told her to pack up and leave. I thanked her for letting me realize my self-worth. After some time had passed, she had driven to her parents' house and was staying there for a bit. When Hayoung came back, she noticed her mom's room was a lot better than it was and knew what had happened. I hugged Hayoung and told her I was sorry for the mess I had caused, before reassuring her that nothing was her fault. I told her my ex-wife would come back a few more times to collect the rest of her stuff, but our relationship was over. This event shook me up a lot, but I know things will get better. I'm trying to make Hayoung always feel loved. Hayoung, you are my universe and that will never change. I've realized that I have lost all respect for my husband's willful ignorance, and it may damage my marriage. I, 33, and my husband, 37, were having a discussion about politics and we got onto the topic of our daughter, 7, which led to me expressing my fears about her rights and bodily autonomy. For context, my husband votes Republican and I have always considered myself independent but recently have been shifting very far away from my younger, carefree attitude toward politics. I love him very much and I know for a fact that he loves me, but I have started finding his opinions naive and lacking depth. He is a very good man though and has in the past changed his mind on several things when confronted with them. Further context, My cousin lives in a strict anti-abortion state and almost died a few years ago when the doctors waited until she was actively dying of sepsis before they decided it was okay to remove the dead baby from her body even though it had been dead for weeks beforehand. So needless to say, I had a wake-up call and sharpened up my principles until they are very shiny and pointy. Last night when we were talking about abortion rights being healthcare, I lost my composure out of sheer terror about the possibility of a similar disaster with my cousin happening to our daughter, and how I struggle to understand how he doesn't see the problem with his party, and that in fact I think he is being willfully ignorant to the danger I and my daughter face in favor of his idea about making economics work for our family. I also said that if our daughter dies due to something preventable, like the ability to get a timely and much needed abortion, or gets shot to death in school, that I would let my own mother rot in a nursing home. She votes R2, and I'd never be able to look him in the face again, which would basically be me disappearing and divorcing him. I was crying and upset and explaining how scared I was, and he asked me in a very hurt manner if I'd actually abandon him like that. I am truthful to a fault and said that I would, perhaps out of a sense of illogical grief and betrayal, because I'd know my concerns were not taken seriously and that they had abandoned common sense and did nothing to attempt preventing a very real consequence of voting away mine and my daughter's right to healthcare. I equated it to a slow-motion car wreck with our daughter in mortal danger and him just watching it happen because it doesn't involve his own body. I know he needs to hear it. But I think I was too raw and open about it to steer the conversation in a healthy way, and I have a very blunt manner. I apologized this morning for saying that I'd leave him, even though I knew I would, and he tentatively accepted it. And I said we'd talk about things later when I can articulate things in a healthier way. But I'm at a loss as to how to make it known how deadly serious this is to me and not make him feel like I'd abandon our marriage over just any sensitive topic. I do not need people telling me to leave him. I don't think I know how to make it any more digestible and be clear without going nuclear over something that has not happened, as our daughter is too young to suffer that yet. The rub is that I am the person who is changing the dynamic of our relationship, and I'm beginning to understand how politics breaks up families. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Ask him to name scenarios that he would accept the premature death of his daughter. Ask him to name what life-saving healthcare he would be willing to deny for his daughter based on principles. If he can't name any, ask him why is abortion different. Use your cousin's story as a hypothetical for your daughter, but be as graphic with it as you can be. But in all honesty, if you must labor so much to convince him to care about yours and your daughter's health and well-being, then this should also serve as a wake-up call to you. And if I were you, I'd take back your apology. You meant what you said and only apologized to comfort him. I say let him be uncomfortable. Why are you so concerned with the bluntness of your words and not concerned about how quick he is to dismiss you? Comment 2. I'm the daughter of a Republican dad and liberal mom. I'm honestly not sure why they are still together, and think it is because they are older and retired. Luckily, I live in a liberal state that doesn't take away human rights, so I think it allows my mom not to think about it as much. It's been since Trump that I've really seen the division between them. I don't really have any advice to give you, but the perspective from a daughter in a similar type of situation. I love my dad, but I don't have a lot of respect for him because I don't think he actually understands what's going on. It hurts as a daughter to know my dad votes for a party that is actively doing bad to a lot of human rights, mainly because he believes in the economics of Republicans. I also hate having to be around my parents in the evening, especially if they are watching the news. My mom definitely holds frustration for my dad and takes it out by saying mean things to him. And I feel like my dad doesn't take it seriously, because I don't think he actually understands how scary this is for certain people. I wish my parents would do therapy together, and honestly you guys should probably do therapy together if you actually want to make your marriage work without resentment growing. Comment 3. The worst part is all these men talk about the economics of being a Republican, when all the data shows time and time again that those economics are absolutely horrible for 99.9% of us. They literally will cause harm to their families and others because they believe lies and don't want to hear otherwise. Comment 4. I understand why you don't want advice to leave him, but you may have to accept that as your reality simply because your morals, values, and ethics are no longer compatible. But of course, do everything you can to try to reach him. Obviously, deep down, you know him and know he has the potential. I went through this with my own husband years ago. And I wasn't nice about it. It was pretty much a deal breaker for me then, and now, and he was too busy being smugly libertarian on every other issue, so I had nothing to lose. That said, once he extracted his head from his rectum, I've been happy to explain things from my perspective as long as he's willing to actually listen. He's not perfect, but he gets a lot that men generally don't or take for granted. I do know that one of my big points was that his views meant I couldn't trust him. Women's reproductive rights sure don't affect men directly, but by not caring about the issue because they care about the women in their life, they are sending a clear message that women are interchangeable appliances. He either cares about the things that are important to you or he doesn't actually care about you. He can't claim to love and respect you and want a future with you if he's voting against your basic interests. That is hurtful for you, but you are allowing him to center his feelings hurt because you threatened to divorce him someday. He's hurting you now, but he wants to focus on his potential future pain that would be a direct consequence of his behavior now. Let that sink in. He is telling you exactly where you stand with him in multiple ways. Further, he's deluded if he thinks voting for Trump Republicans is going to actually be good for his finances. Maybe in the short term. The reality is that any gains he makes will be offset by the tax overhaul and tariff system. If your wealth is dependent on your income in any significant way, Trump winning would put your income at risk as women are forced out of the workplace and into a housewife role. If your income depends on either of you working overtime, Trump is giving employers a way to deny overtime premiums through creative scheduling. A lot of tax deductions and credits that primarily benefit low and middle class families are being eliminated while those that benefit the wealthiest are left intact or strengthened. We've already had a preview of his roided out trickle-down economy from his first term. Your husband is being incredibly short-sighted. Comment 5. I'm not sure what you are trying to achieve with this post. You say you don't need people telling you to leave him. However, the harsh reality is, in this situation, that is your present and your future, as long as you stick with Republican men. He is not a very good man when he puts your daughter's and every other woman's life at risk by voting for people who want nothing but destruction and power. That doesn't change, no matter how much you gaslight yourself that you can somehow fix him, or see reason. Sorry to be so blunt about it. Comment 6. This. If a man is a Republican, if he plans on voting for the GOP candidate, even if Trump keels over tomorrow and is replaced by someone who's less openly insane, if he is willfully ignorant, he is not a good man. Full stop. He can help old ladies cross the street and volunteer at a soup kitchen as a hobby, but he's still not a good man because he does not actually care about women. OP, you think you can fix your partner? You cannot. Nobody can fix another person. You can't be the person who is changing the dynamic of the relationship when you're not the bad actor. You should not have to explain why rolling back women's rights is fucked up to get someone to see that. He already knows and does not care. Update. We had a serious discussion. I went into more detail about my concerns and fears and it was intense. I was much better at presenting the case. I gave him several hypotheticals that involved a particularly gruesome set of circumstances involving his balls. I won't bore you with the nitty-gritty, but the gist was to shift his perspective. I told him to seriously consider carrying a tiny fetus in his ballsack and the fact that the risks were things like exploding balls, sepsis, etc., and the myriad of ways he could end up dead, permanently physically injured and disfigured, or unable to produce a fetus in the future if he didn't have the option of removing the fetus from his balls. I asked him if he would even want to take the risk and he agreed that he'd be very likely to remove it unless he was ready for those risks. I asked him why in the world would I be justified in telling him he has to carry it no matter what and it might only be removed after it starts to explode out of his ballsack or his organs start shutting down. Once he seemed to start grasping the enormity of what abortion encompasses and seeing why it's very important to not let unknown people control what options you have with no medical reason. I told him I lost a bit of respect for willful ignorance, and that I can tell he avoided thinking about it. He knows in some way that it says something about his character. And I resented having to even give him a hypothetical in the first place, and that if he cares for me and our daughter that he should automatically actively be using his empathy skills every day. I explained how I have demonstrated the capacity to care about and evaluate gender issues he's brought to my attention in the past. That was a difficult part of the conversation. I also told him that I do not trust him to always make good decisions for us and that I feel alone in shouldering those responsibilities. He listened and let me talk a lot. He asked if I was going to leave him and he was clearly nervous and bracing for the worst. I told him I'm not taking drastic steps like that, but I certainly will when it comes to keeping our daughter healthy and safe. I also started to say something about how I know I would lie to him in a heartbeat in a situation where our daughter needed an abortion or medical care, and he interrupted me to say, "You wouldn't have to lie because I'll be driving the car or buying the plane tickets and we will all go anywhere we need to." Y'all, I burst into tears. We ended the conversation and he said I laid a lot on him and he needed a break but said he had things to think about. I didn't push any more politics, but I feel like my trust has been slightly restored. I'm not getting my hopes up, but I think he realizes that he's wading in dark and dangerous waters when it comes to our futures. Relevant comments. Comment 1. All of this reminds me so much of that scene in the show The Handmaid's Tale where June finds out that she's not allowed to access her bank account anymore and that her husband has to sign something for her to get birth control pills. And her husband dismisses her concerns, basically saying, "That's okay, I'll take care of you, no big deal, it's fine." It's easy to dismiss a concern when that concern doesn't seem to affect you directly. And the problem is that no matter what we say, no matter what example we give, some people will always have a degree of removal from an issue that can affect their understanding and their empathy. My own husband is empathetic and caring. But he doesn't understand why I, someone staring down the barrel of menopause, is so angry about abortion access restrictions. He doesn't understand why I, a woman in a loving marriage that doesn't look likely to end anytime soon, is upset about the end of no-fault divorce. Or why I, as someone with no connection to prison, is upset about our horribly inequitable carceral system. And he will say he understands my objections, but then he's like, why bother wasting energy getting upset about it? I don't know how to get across to him that just because it doesn't apply to me or us right now doesn't mean it won't later. I also don't know how to get across to him that it's very difficult to see attacks on our ability to get a divorce or access an abortion as a direct slap against me as a woman. If someone punches someone else like me in the face while staring me directly in the eye to show me that they would be doing it to me if they could, that's very upsetting. But they aren't looking him in the eye, so he doesn't see it that way. Comment 2. I admire the heck out of you for having this huge conversation with your husband. Thank you for making the case for all of us. And thanks for sharing with us. I hope your example can help others who need to have serious discussions like this with people in their lives. Comment 3. I'm glad you have this talk and that he is starting to reconsider his decisions. But I hope you are very clear with him that this isn't about him setting aside his views for the special case of you and his daughter. Other women are entitled to the same respect and autonomy that he wants for his daughter. If his position is that he will pack the bags and buy the tickets for y'all, but he will nonetheless continue to vote for all other women to be oppressed, he's not a good man. OP. We talked about the women getting turned away from emergency rooms across the country because they were having pregnancy complications for babies they likely wanted to keep, and it was like I could see a gear start cranking in his head. Total silence, like he'd never considered that a lot of women who seek emergency abortions actually wanted their babies. Comment 4. My husband and I had this discussion before our first was born. This was before Roe v. Wade was overturned, but the writing was on the wall that it might go. We live in a very HCOL city for my job, but things weren't going well, and we were debating moving. I told him that as long as kids were on the table, moving to a red state was out of the question. I refused to move to a place where I would not be able to get access to care that I needed and end up dead just because we were trying to have a child. My husband brushed it off. One of his close family members is one of the most prominent OBGYNs in the country. He said that, when the worst came to worst, she would help us out. But I said, how exactly? Imagine I'm suffering from sepsis and about to die, and the hospital I'm in literally will not perform an abortion. What exactly will she do? And he stopped in his tracks. That ended the discussion right there. My husband had simply never had to consider it before. At the time, we weren't seriously thinking about kids, so he hadn't really thought it through. In any case, in a few short years, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I ended up pregnant with our first child. I'm currently pregnant with our second. We still have regular discussions about potentially moving. Never once subsequently has he ever considered a red state. Comment 5. So glad he finally understood the reason why we need to vote the way we do to protect our bodies. But is he going to back up what he says he now understands by voting the opposite of what he's done before? Comment 6. I hate that many men only recognize women's bodily autonomy when they become fathers. I hope you really talk to him about voting Republican this year, otherwise this whole thing is really moot. Comment 7. I'm glad he understood, but he still votes Republican. The Democratic Party is still right-wing. No, they are not leftist unless you're talking about the progressives, but your husband deliberately chose to vote for the more racist, ableist, sexist, bigoted in every way party. The only reason you had this discussion is because it affects you and your daughter on the basis of gender and sex. I'm not going to tell you to get a divorce, but you should probably take a good look at your own morals and principles if you still think it's okay for him to vote the way he does. Especially given everything that has happened since 2016. Editor's note, OP seems satisfied with her discussion with her husband, whether you disagree or not, so is unlikely to update. Therefore, I have marked this conclusion. 3 weeks ago, I got beat up defending 2 girls. My girlfriend felt unsafe, grew distant, and moved to her parents, leaving me to recover alone. First of all, I want to thank every single one of you who commented on my last post. The love and support I received was immense, and it actually made me feel a little better in the mess of it all. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. All of the following happened yesterday, so excuse me if I ramble a bit, it's all fresh in my mind. Original post. Mandatory. I have been with my GF Sarah for 3 years and been living together for 1.5. She is honestly everything I have ever wanted, and I am planning on proposing somewhere next year. So 3 weeks ago I was out with Sarah at a local bar drinking and having a great time with her, as it was just after quarantine had ended where I live. At around 3 a.m. we decided to head home. As we headed to the parking lot where we had parked, we noticed a group of 2 girls and a guy who was clearly drunk trying to hit on them and get them to go to his house. The girls were clearly very uncomfortable and trying to find a way out. Sarah told me that we had to do something, and I told her to go call the cops and get someone as well, because the very least I wanted was her to get hurt during this. So I approached the group and tried to pretend I was the boyfriend of one of the 2 girls, and long story short, I got my ass kicked. The guy was at least 6 feet 4 and 220 pounds, whereas I'm 5 feet 11, 167 pounds. I'm fairly muscular myself, but there was no way I could have taken someone that big. I knew it from the start. At least from all the noise we had made, a lot of people rushed to the scene and the girls got away safe. I was rushed to the ER because the motherfucker had broken my ribs, which had punctured my right lung. Yay. After that incident, Sarah has grown distant from me. Even though she visited and stayed with me at the hospital, she hasn't been the same since. And I thought she just needed time to move past this. However, 5 days ago she told me that she is not the same person after what happened, and she doesn't know if she feels safe with me after I got beat up like that. Honestly, hearing that hurt me more than when I got my ribs broken. She has moved to her parents for the time being and she told me she needs time. Meanwhile, I had no one here to help me, so my brother left his 2 boys and wife to move in with me. I know I'm just venting at this point, but I don't want this to be over like that. Reddit, is there anything I can do to salvage the situation? Update. Until yesterday it had been 14 days since my last contact with Sarah. My brother had left 4 days prior because I felt bad keeping him away from his family for so long, plus I could take care of myself to some extent. So around 2 p.m. while I was making lunch I heard the doorbell ring. I go to open the door and there she is. Sarah. With tears in her eyes, eye bags, frizzy hair, looking like a total mess. During the time we've been together I've seen her in her ups and downs, but I'd never seen her in such a horrible state before. So I let her sit on the couch. We still hadn't said a word as we were both dumbfounded. I was so overwhelmed by emotions, I wanted to hug her. I wanted to full blast her. I didn't even know what I wanted to do. So I did nothing and waited for her to talk. After 5 or 10 minutes of silence she starts sobbing and saying she's sorry and then crying. At this point I can barely hold myself together. So I hold her hand and try to calm her down so I can figure out what is going on. After a while she finally somewhat calms down and starts talking. And that's where it got bad. Something that I didn't include in the original post, because it wouldn't make sense anyway, is that Sarah's mother has been divorced and remarried once. From what Sarah has told me, her biological father cheated on her mother while she was still a kid and that's why they broke up. And that's also why she doesn't have any kind of relationship with her father. It seemed odd when I first learned about it, but I didn't question it. That is not the whole story though. Sarah's biological father didn't only cheat on her mother. He was a drug addict that also used to beat her up frequently. Without getting into a lot of graphic detail, in one instance when Sarah's brother tried to intervene and protect her mother, he ended up getting beat up too. So when she saw me intervening and getting my ass kicked in the bar incident, it triggered some kind of PTSD in her head that she could not control. That's why she had grown distant and eventually left. It all spiraled out of control and she could not handle it. In those 2 weeks we'd been apart she'd barely eaten or slept and even made some really dark thoughts which I'd rather not go into. She told me as a horrible girlfriend for leaving me alone in my condition and that she doesn't expect us to be together again after that, which I told her isn't the case. So we have a very long road ahead of us. My number 1 priority right now is getting her to see a therapist, which I suggested we can do together if she's scared to do alone. So yeah, that's where we are at. Some of you were right, that there was some deeper issue behind what happened, but I could not have possibly known. I also wanted to take this opportunity to say something that I got messaged about a lot. I got a lot of comments and messages saying that I was a moron for what I did at that parking lot and that I should mind my own business next time and not play the hero, etc. First of all, I did not initiate the fight with the dude. As I said when I got there, I tried to pretend I was the boyfriend of one of the girls in case. When that didn't work, I got between the girls and the dude, trying to create some space between them, and that's when he started to push me and eventually started throwing punches. Secondly, no matter how hard I hit the gym, I would never be able to take that guy one-on-one. As I said, I'm pretty fit and I've been working out for several years, but the fella was a lot bigger than me. Unless I had a gun or something, which isn't legal in my country, I was doomed. Finally, for the people telling me to mind my own business, well, let me tell you exactly what I was doing. It is mine and everyone else's responsibility to look after the ones who can't protect themselves in this shitty world. No, I do not consider myself a hero, nor did I do it for the show. I did it because in some other instance one of those girls could have been my girlfriend, sister, mother needing help. And these girls were somebody else's girlfriend, sister or mother. If I was put in that situation 100 more times I would act the same. Edit. I also talked to her about the proposal I wanted to make this year. I was planning on doing it as a surprise, but in the way things have turned out I figured it would be better if she knew it first. We both agreed it should be delayed for now. I left because my husband almost killed our newborn son by not paying attention. My young daughter tried to save her brother and got hurt. I'm 25 and have been with my husband, 30, since 2018. We have a 3-year-old girl and a newborn boy. But tonight, things almost took a turn for the worse. My husband has always had trouble paying attention, but I never thought it would come to this. Our neighborhood is weirdly laid out, with cars zooming by at crazy speeds at all hours of the day. I was folding clothes when I heard our toddler screaming, "Dad, help!" That tone made me drop everything and sprint outside. What I saw made my blood run cold, our newborn in his stroller, careening towards the busy street. I screamed and ran to him, barely stopping the stroller in time. My baby girl's hands and knees were scratched up because she tripped trying to run after the stroller. I snatched up my baby, heart pounding, and scanned for my husband. He wasn't watching. He was chatting with neighbors, completely oblivious. The anger I felt was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I stormed up to him, shouting in disbelief. He looked shocked at first, then realized what almost happened. The apologies and tears came pouring out, but it was too late. I couldn't wrap my head around how he could be so careless, so blind to our toddler's screams and the stroller rolling away. I packed up the kids and left, staying with my parents. They're on my side, But my husband keeps texting, begging forgiveness, calling it an honest mistake. But I can't shake the terror of almost losing my baby because he couldn't focus for a single second. My baby girl got hurt in the process because he couldn't pay attention. I almost lost my son because he couldn't pay attention. I can't stop crying. I feel so guilty. I wish this all never happened. Sorry it's short. I just want to hold my babies and I can't stop shaking every time I think about it. What if I was just 1 second late? Would I have been planning a funeral? And the reason I left the house instead of him was because I hate that house. I don't feel like it is safe for the kids with all the traffic, and I was right. It's my husband's workhouse. I can't be running either. I had a C-section less 6 weeks ago. A lot of people are saying, why wasn't I watching the kids? I was doing their laundry like a parent. Does he takes them for walks to have bonding time with them? He literally created this by himself. This has never happened before. How was I supposed to know? And people saying, why didn't I get him checked out? I'm not his mother. He is 30 years old. I'm sick of people acting like I have to parent my own husband while I literally have a newborn, a toddler, and I'm still healing from a C-section that I teared my stitches from when I ran to get my baby. I don't care if it was his ADHD. The court wouldn't care either. If he killed my child, he would have gone to prison. Either way. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Okay, he was 100% wrong and I'd be livid just like you. However, I'm a little confused about the situation. Like, why was your baby just in a stroller unattended? Why did the stroller randomly go into the road? Since it sounds like you were at home, is this maybe something y'all normally do just to have a place for a baby to sit out front of your house when your toddler is playing outside? And maybe it was a freak accident. I'm going to be honest, as a mom, most of us have stories of near-death experiences with our kids. We can be naive and stupid and expect a little child to have more awareness, survival skills than they do. When my son was 2, we had a horrible experience with an escalator, and I still have times where I can't sleep because of it. We are all idiots when it comes to parenting, because how can you know until you live it? And seriously, like, every parent has one of these moments, unless you're one of those insanely lucky ones. I still really don't understand the whole scenario of what happened, but to me it seems he really has remorse and feels terrible. And once you go through something like that, you never forget it. So if he cares and loves your kids, he's devastated and has learned a hard lesson. I don't know that your response was the best, but get why you did it in the moment. But I think you guys have a serious talk and maybe look into moving if possible. I wouldn't go straight to divorce like Reddit loves to preach. I think there is a solution here. And so sorry you're dealing with this, it's literally the worst feeling in the world. OP. Hi love, let me just clear it up for you. So I was sitting inside in the lounge room and there's a huge window behind the TV that was a little open so I could hear outside. That's when I heard my toddler scream for her dad to help. When I was outside, he was standing on the neighbor's driveway. I assume that he must have had left the baby literally on the road because there was no possible way that it would have rolled off like that, and my toddler was playing with the neighbor's cat before she noticed her brother was rolling away when I confronted him about it. He tried to explain but he just kept stuttering. I still don't know what exactly happened. I don't know if he didn't put the brakes on the stroller. If the wind blew him away, I just don't know. My neighbor contacted me and asked if I wanted the security footage because his wife is 100% on my side, so I'll probably find out once it gets sent to me. Comment 2. I want to acknowledge that this is a horrific situation. But, saying I don't care if it was his ADHD isn't going to fix anything, and will probably only make things worse. Talking and thinking about it like he intentionally tried to kill your child isn't either. With ADHD, you actually do not register things like this at all sometimes. Life expectancy for those of us with ADHD is actually significantly lower because many of us end up, often accidentally, killing ourselves. It is not the same thing as carelessness, but learning about ADHD a little deeper can help you guys be safer. Understanding how my ADHD works and using different than standard precautions, like my brain needs, has actually most likely saved my life. Lie out what you want from him. That's probably because he gets his ADHD better under control, whether that be through prescription medication or more homeopathic method, that you get a different place if possible, that he does not take your kids out in your front yard without you, etc. Also, neither he or the neighbor noticed, but you heard your kid from inside? Something seems off here. Were your neighbors just watching the stroller roll towards the street? Was your husband on the other side of your house where he couldn't see the stroller? Were you already walking outside as this unfolded? I'm trying to understand better what was going on here and why your husband or the neighbor did not notice, but you did from inside. People with ADHD tend to be incredibly good and quick to act in emergency situations, so this is especially weird. I'm absolutely not accusing you of leaving anything out or anything, but asking you to think about what your husband and the neighbor were doing that neither noticed. That smells fishy. This is a horrible situation. I lost a pet due to the inattentiveness of ADHD, but I can't imagine losing or even nearly losing a child. OP, that's why I'm waiting for the footage. It doesn't make sense how this all happened. I don't know how to explain my house. There's a huge window in the lounge room, it was open a little too, I can listen out. The neighbor's house is 2 houses away. We are at the end of the street near the main road. That when you first walk into my house on your left, there is the lounge on the right. The kitchen, when I got up I couldn't run that fast because I'm still healing. Sorry if this doesn't make sense. When I ran outside, the neighbor's wife was running for the stroller but was still far away, and the neighbor was helping my little girl off the road. That's all I seen. I'm just waiting for a response from them. My husband was just standing there, hands on his head, doing nothing. Comment 3, I fucking screamed when I read what happened. Are you okay? Like, did you get any more damage to yourself? You literally just had a baby. What the fuck was your husband doing? Like, being outside with small children, especially on a busy street, should be treated like watching babies swim, because anything can happen in an instant. I hope you're okay. And also, YDK, but do you all have cameras in your house? I wonder how long your husband was talking to the neighbor. OP, I tore my stitches from the C-section and had to go to the ER while I was there. I made sure my baby girl got her knees and hands bandaged up. The crazy thing is, I didn't even realize I was bleeding until I was in my parents' car. My mom pointed it out. She panicked and took the baby boy back to their house, and my dad took me and my daughter to the hospital. Update 1. The neighbor's wife sent me the footage, and I really can't just wrap my head around it. So my husband was walking with the stroller and my toddler was in front of them when they passed the neighbor's house. My neighbor was outside, washing his car, and my toddler saw his pet cat and stopped to pet it. So my husband stopped, left my baby on the road. He didn't even bother locking the wheels and walked all the way up the driveway, not even bothering looking back at the baby. He had his back face to him for about 5 minutes before the stroller just suddenly started moving. I think it's because the road is on a hill kinda, or it could have been the wind. My toddler never went near the stroller. It couldn't be her. The stroller went down the road and my toddler. That's when she started screaming and running for it when she saw it. The neighbor started running after my daughter when she tripped. He tried to pick her up. That's when the neighbor's wife's car comes into frame and she stops and starts running back to the way the stroller is coming after that. You can't really see anything because it's all out of frame, but you can hear all the commotion. My husband just stood there the whole time, hand on his head with a blank stare on his face. He didn't even do anything when our toddler was crying from hurting herself. He only started crying when I confronted him. What should I do? I genuinely do not know what to do. I'm panicking. This was never the life I wanted for my kids. I don't understand why he was standing there. I have not even gotten a text or a call from him since I got sent the video. It's just been silent. I just can't get the sound of my daughter's screams. That's the sound that no mother wants to hear. I can't explain at the moment, but it felt like my blood went cold. And I just felt pure fear. I never want to watch the footage again. Update 2. Hey everyone, I posted here a while back about my husband nearly killing our newborn son. I wanted to give a quick update on the situation. After reading through the comments, I decided to go back to my husband. Many of you pointed out that if I left him, we'd end up with 50-50 custody of our kids, which I couldn't bear. So I made the difficult choice to stay, even though my love for him has faded. My plan now is to tough it out until our kids turn 18, and then leave. I'm terrified of getting pregnant again, especially since I'm not allowed to use birth control or get my tubes tied. My parents, who could offer support, are moving away, leaving me feeling trapped. Despite everything, my husband tries hard to make things right. He still treats me with affection and goes out of his way to create special moments for our family. Seeing him bond with our newborn and our daughter fills me with conflicting emotions. I know I can't stand being with him, but I can't bear to separate him from our kids either. He was so happy when we came back home, but I can't stand even looking at him. I feel some guilt because he still calls me by my nickname, looks at me like I'm the only girl in the world, besides our daughter, and he still continues our traditions, like when the kids are sleeping he will go get ice cream and our favorite snacks and sets up a fort on our bed to watch movies on our laptop. Even though I'm sacrificing my happiness, my priority is ensuring my children's safety and well-being. It's a tough situation, but I'm doing my best to navigate it for the sake of my family. This is a throwaway, so I'm gonna log out by update 3. As you can see from my previous post, I did go back to him and it was quite literally the biggest mistake I've ever made, but I felt like I really had no choice. No money, family moved out of state, a lot has happened the past couple of months, so it turns out my husband started taking meds for his ADHD. A couple of weeks before I was due to give birth to our son, he took my kids on a walk to cover up the fact that he was also on meth. He took my kids to meet his dealer apparently every time they went for a walk. Looking back at the footage now, it makes so much sense because of the way he was talking to the neighbor before everything happened. He was kind of leaning to the side. I talked to my neighbor, and I asked him if he knew that my husband was on drugs. He said he didn't, but he noticed that my husband looked a bit off recently. His wife works at a rehab clinic after a fight where I had to flee with the kids to the neighbor's house. She pointed out that the way he was acting was the way that people acted with drug withdrawal. My neighbor and his wife ended up helping me book a flight to my parents. I'm currently with them right now, and I have spoken to a lawyer that my parents are going to help me pay for. I thank all the people from my original post that told me to keep the footage because it is going to come in handy. My husband keeps sending me videos of him shooting up and doing other substances. He keeps saying that they are going to fix him. He sent me a video of him standing in our kids' room. And he was just screaming at me, saying that it helped him cope with his addiction. He took a knife and stabbed both of our kids' mattresses. I am not going back. He even cut up the side of my bed. There's a comment from my previous post that has been sitting in the back of my mind and has been bugging me, I think. You know which one it was by relevant comment, saying I don't care if it was his ADHD isn't going to fix anything, and will probably only make things worse. Talking and thinking about it like he intentionally tried to kill your child isn't either. With ADHD you actually do not register things like this at all sometimes. Life expectancy for those of us with ADHD is actually significantly lower because many of us end up, often accidentally, killing ourselves. It is not the same thing as carelessness, but learning about ADHD a little deeper can help you guys be safer. Understanding how my ADHD works and using different than standard precautions, like my brain needs, has actually most likely saved my life. Lie out what you want from him? That's probably because he gets his ADHD better under control, whether that be through prescription medication or more homeopathic methods, that you get a different place if possible, that he does not take your kids out in your front yard without you, etc. Also, neither he or the neighbor noticed, but you heard your kid from inside. Something seems off here. Were your neighbors just watching the stroller roll towards the street? Was your husband on the other side of your house where he couldn't see the stroller? Were you already walking outside as this unfolded? I'm trying to understand better what was going on here and why your husband or the neighbor did not notice, but you did from inside. People with ADHD tend to be incredibly good and quick to act in emergency situations, so this is especially weird. I'm absolutely not accusing you of leaving anything out or anything, but asking you to think about what your husband and the neighbor were doing that neither noticed. That smells fishy. This is a horrible situation. I lost a pet due to the inattentiveness of ADHD, but I can't imagine even nearly losing a child. WTF, it baffles me that you can even compare losing an animal to losing a child. You made people with ADHD sound completely unreliable for themselves and that they can't do anything. You made them sound very helpless, and saying that the life expectancy thing was completely uncalled for as well. I bet many people with ADHD reading that completely disagreed with you, judging from all the comments and YouTube videos I've seen on my post. I don't know if you're projecting that you lost a pet from your inattentiveness of ADHD. If you were letting things die in your care, you need to get stronger help. And no, I was not going to lay out what I want from him. He's the one that started mixing his meds and was high off his mind every time they went out for a walk. And no, I'm not ableist. I was in a very vulnerable state. When I first posted my original post, all I was doing was looking for help and advice, but all I got was, where was you? What were you doing? Why weren't you with the kids? Why didn't you get your husband checked out? I was healing from a fucking C-section. Get that through your heads. I genuinely hope that everybody that said something horrible about me in my original post has to get cut open and then 4 days later is forced to run down the street. I gave him another chance like you all said in my original post. You saw what happened. Stop using ADHD as an excuse. I genuinely believe that if he had killed my child, you would have defended him, and no, I did not know he was on drugs. And all the people that reached out to me, I'm going to be forever grateful for all of the parents with ADHD that didn't make me feel like it was all my fault, and all the stories that you guys have shared with me made me feel so seen, because I know exactly how it feels. I hope everybody is doing well. Everybody that was defending me. I wish I could give you a big hug. I genuinely wish I could send gift baskets. I would thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and I am so sorry about that comment that person made. I know you guys are all not like that. You guys are genuinely intelligent. From all the comments that I've read, I could not thank you guys enough. And one person that sent me that horrible message, I genuinely hope I run into you one day so I can beat your ass until you see stars and say anything about my daughter or my son one more time, and I will literally track you down. I found out I was pregnant with my 4th child not long after divorcing my husband. I'm conflicted about whether I should keep this baby. This is long. I'm sorry, I've sort of written a novel here. I wanted to post this in a relationship advice group, but the subject matter isn't allowed. My ex-husband and I were married for 10 years, although the last 2 were spent in variations of separation. We've been divorced for roughly a year. We have 3 kids, 10, 8, 5, I'm pregnant with our 4th baby. I don't know if we'll actually be parents to 4 kids or not. I'm so conflicted. We are so conflicted. There was no abuse or cheating in our marriage, although he did sleep with somebody else during our separation. There are a variety of other reasons why we ultimately got divorced. After the initial feelings of failure and heartache, and there was an immense amount of heartache on my end despite being the one who filed for divorce, we were able to get along pretty well. It becomes platonic so quickly, and it's like when we remove the romantic and married relationship from the equation, things got so much better. We split time with our kids 50-50ths. That's really hard for me because being a mom is such a huge part of my identity that I still sometimes struggle to know what to do with myself during his time with the kids. Ultimately, I'm happy that he's a loving, involved father, and I'm glad that they do spend half their time with him, even if I still sometimes cry over not being with them all the time. We still do things together as a family sometimes. We sit together at our kids' activities, things like that. He has a girlfriend now. She seems nice. He met her not long after our divorce was finalized. It hurt. I cried way too much over it. He waited over 6 months to introduce her to our kids, which I was thankful for. My kids like her. Our youngest child was unexpectedly admitted to the hospital not long ago. He had surgery. In the grand scheme of things, it was a pretty minor surgery and he's absolutely fine now, but this is my baby and he had to spend multiple nights in the hospital, so this was a big deal for me. My ex-husband was there the entire time, being a great dad, being a supportive partner to me as I worried over every little thing. We spent all those nights in the hospital together and I remembered why I married him. He was always able to be the strong, level-headed rock for me. He was this safe person who I knew would take care of everything and protect me. When we were in the hospital, he told me that I'm the most important woman in his life. When our son was discharged, my ex-husband came back to my house. My baby was home safe. Our other 2 children were excited to be home after staying with my husband's sister for several nights. We were all together at home like a family again. That night after our kids were in bed, we had sex. I hadn't been hoping for it or planning it. It was just like as soon as the kids were tucked away in their rooms, we were having this intensely passionate, needy, amazing sex that we shouldn't have been having. We went to sleep in my bed and at some point in the middle of the night we had sex again. The next morning we both decided our emotions with the whole situation with our son just got the better of us. We said we didn't regret sleeping together, but that's all it was and we were just going to go back to our normal divorce lives. We wouldn't make it awkward, just move on. Then I found out I was pregnant. We didn't use a condom. I don't even have condoms in my house anymore. I'm not on birth control. I haven't been since we divorced. I haven't needed it since I haven't had the time or interest to start dating again. I really wanted to be single for a while. I know I was ovulating when we slept together, which was probably a contributing subconscious factor as to why it happened. My body sees him being a good dad to our kids and it wants another. My cycle is like clockwork and we've always conceived on the first try every time we've tried to get pregnant. Our first kid was not even a try. It was 2 weeks before your wedding you find out you're pregnant and spend your honeymoon with morning sickness surprise. So now I'm about 8 weeks pregnant. I've known for about a week. I just told him this past weekend. I didn't know if I would tell him at all. I realize now that I only told him in hopes that he'd tell me what to do and figure the situation out for me. Only he didn't. I know it makes no sense to have a baby with somebody I chose to divorce. I don't need a 4th child. Why can't I let go of this though? Update 1. I posted about a week ago. My ex-husband and I have been divorced for about a year. We have 3 kids, ranging from 10, 5 years old. We have gotten along great since the divorce, better than when we were married. It's almost like we're friends, can do things with our kids, and enjoy being around each other. About 2 months ago, our youngest unexpectedly ended up having surgery and spending several nights in the hospital. He's fine now. My ex-husband and I stayed together with our son the entire time he was in the hospital. When he was discharged, my ex-husband came back to my house, or former family home, at our son's request. He was just supposed to spend a few hours there, help our son get settled, then go home. However, I guess all of the emotions and being together as a family in our former shared home got the better of us and we ended up having sex twice that night. Now I'm 9 weeks pregnant. I wasn't on birth control, was on it until after our divorce was finalized, but have been intentionally remaining single for a while and not involved with men in any way, so was giving my body a break from birth control. Initially we were undecided about what to do, but as of last weekend we made the decision together to have the baby. It feels sort of crazy to me. Definitely not a situation I ever imagined I'd find myself in. I already picture this baby looking just like our other kids. I guess that's why I struggled with the idea of not continuing with the pregnancy, which I know isn't really a valid reason to have a baby. This is probably the last baby I'll ever have. I'm 39, so even if I were to meet a man who I trusted enough to want to have a child with and a future with, I'll be well into my 40s by then. I plan to be very picky, but I'm not even at the point of wanting to find somebody new yet. We're not getting back together, for now. We get along great when we're not married and living in the same house. We feel it'd be irresponsible to all of our children to attempt to get back together right now because of this. Chances are higher that we'll be able to co-parent this baby successfully if we live separately. However, we are committed to working together to do what has to be done to take care of the baby when he or she gets here. Our kids are doing so great right now and they seem very happy and secure with the current setup of our lives and homes, so we want to stick with this for now. I don't know if I really understand what I'm getting myself into. Our other kids were all born into a marriage and a 2-parent home. I know that sharing custody of a baby will be a lot different than the kids going back and forth between homes. I might be feeling too positive about it, but I think it could work out fine. The new baby will just see this as normal, right? Next thing to worry about will be having to explain this to everyone when we tell them. My family and friends will get over it, but I'm especially concerned with explaining it to our kids. I'm worried our oldest won't take the news well. She also knows what sex is and how babies are made. And for everyone concerned about his girlfriend, she's not his girlfriend anymore. Top rated comment. These two are 100% getting back together within a year and then breaking up again in another. Update 2. Several people have asked me for an update on my situation. My ex-husband and I are having a baby. My other posts are on my profile. A recap is that we were married for 10 years, divorced for almost 1.5 years now, and have 3 kids together. We slept together twice during a stressful family time and I ended up pregnant. We've since admitted we are both still in love with each other, but have not actually declared that we're back together, mainly for the same of our kids. I last posted toward the end of January. I'm 28 weeks pregnant. We're having a little girl. As far as the pregnancy goes, it's been like a textbook pregnancy and so I feel pretty good, just more tired than I ever remember being during pregnancy before. My husband and I continue to live separately and share custody of our kids. We each have them 50% of the time. They're all aware that we're having a baby and none of them seem to be deeply confused or emotionally damaged by their divorced parents having a baby together. We explained it in an age-appropriate way. Our oldest child was more grossed out that her parents had sex than anything else, since she now understands what sex is and how babies are made. We've been involved with her quite a bit and she's excited now. I even took her to one of my appointments. She's excited to have a baby sister and she understands that mom and dad love her and her siblings, that we love this new baby, and that we love each other as people and as parenting partners without actually being together as a married couple in one house. Meanwhile, my husband and I have started to attend couples counseling. We tried marriage counseling when we were separated before we divorced, but I think we were both already pretty mentally done so counseling didn't do much for us then. I think we're getting way more out of it now because we're actually invested in it and putting in a lot of effort. Sometimes I feel great after a session, and at other times I feel not so great and am reminded of reasons why we divorced. Overall, I think it's a good thing for us no matter what happens with our relationship. We've been sleeping together for the last few months. We already agreed that we won't be seeing other people at this time. I wouldn't be saying this while pregnant anyway, and it's not as if I'll even have time with 3 kids and a newborn. We agreed that we will not open ourselves to being with other people while we are working on our relationship and before that conversation is had between us. We are carrying on just as we have been since our divorce, as far as our kids are concerned. Dad doesn't spend the night at our house. We do things together as a family sometimes, but we were doing that even before anything was rekindled between us. We're not acting as a couple when we're together as a family. We're friendly with each other, but there is no holding hands, kissing, etc. Our main concern is our kids. We refuse to say we're back together. If we officially get back together, we really want to feel certain that it'd be for the long term, that we're ready to commit to that. We don't want to give our kids whiplash or do anything to make them insecure about our family. We would like to get to that point, but we aren't there yet. I think if my husband had his way we'd be there. He's ready to say he's there now. He'd love to move back home. But he understands and agrees with my reasoning. I'd love for him to move back home too, based only on emotions. We both have things to work on, separately and together. I want to be a better spouse this time around. I thought I was being a really great wife and I was on the surface. I also know that right now I feel so in love and am hopped on hormones and pregnancy happiness. I always feel super happy, super positive, and super horny during pregnancy, and I know I have to be careful with trusting anything I feel during this time because it's like I'm on a 24/7 natural high. I think the biggest issue right now is that he's far more, let's throw caution to the wind, even though he agrees with all of my reasoning, and I want to be way more careful. Final update. I've made a few posts about my husband getting pregnant after we divorced. We were married for 10 years and had 3 kids before getting divorced. We got along so much better after we divorced and we have been really good co-parents during this time, but we were functioning strictly as friendly co-parents. We slept together around 1 year after our divorce was finalized and conceived a 4th baby, which we ultimately decided to keep. Our 4th child, a sweet baby girl, was born at the end of May. She's so perfect and we both feel we made the right choice to bring her into the world. It was the smoothest, easiest birth I've had and I take that as a sign. I feel like I fell in love with him all over again during labor and delivery and that's when I knew I was ready to make our relationship official and public to everyone, including our children. Contrary to all the assumptions, our kids really don't seem to be negatively affected or confused about the baby, and I don't think the newest baby is getting any less love or attention than our 3 kids born within our marriage have. This is normal to them now. They understand we're still a family and no matter what we'll always be a family whether mom and dad live together. We are still living separately and technically still maintaining the custody schedule we had in place for our oldest 3 kids. Although, the kids are with me every weekday right now since it's summer break and I'm on maternity leave. We have a different arrangement for the baby, but he does take her overnight a few nights a week. I got our family home in the divorce and he spends time here with all of us. He has spent some nights here at home to help with the baby, but he doesn't stay in my bedroom quite yet. He has not moved in, although he has tried and continues to suggest it. This is probably the biggest point of contention these days. To me, this feels like the best of both worlds. I love him and truly don't want to be with anyone else. I think I sort of function better and am happier also living in my own space that he just visits. I know it's not the norm and some might say this means I don't really love him as much as I think. I really believe I'm just one of those people who needs more independence and alone time, and maybe we never would have got divorced in the first place if this had been the arrangement from the beginning. Is it sort of selfish? Maybe. I don't know anyone else with this arrangement, but I know some people out there do this. For all intents and purposes, we are together in a relationship again. We've made it official and exclusive, as juvenile as that sounds. We had already made it official between ourselves, but we hadn't really announced it to family and friends or our kids. We are still in love with each other or back in love with each other, and we are not seeing anyone else. Our kids have adjusted well. They've been seeing a therapist since we filed for divorce, so that has really helped us navigate some of this. Prior to the baby's birth, we did not tell them that we were essentially in a relationship. Only so long you can keep that a secret from your kids. Even though they're young, they're perceptive. So we've recently explained to them that mommy and daddy love each other, but we get along better living in separate homes, and for now we think this is the best thing for our family. The only problem is that now they keep asking about when we will all live together again. I'm sure it's a little confusing to them, but I'm not sure how we could be handling it any better. We attempted marriage counseling when we separated, before divorce. It was not successful. I don't think either of us was 100% committed to it at the time. He really did not take it seriously back then, but I was more stubborn and resistant than I originally realized. We're in couples therapy now, and it's like night and day compared to last time. I'm scared to live together again, so we aren't going to do that anytime soon. It's not that I don't trust him. I don't trust us as a couple. I refuse to put my kids through all of that again. So, getting remarried and moving in together isn't something in the plans right now. Maybe one day. I hope we can get to that point. I just don't want my kids to have to go through a divorce and splitting households yet again. I feel like they'd lose all trust in us then. OP on their living situation. I think it might be best for us to find a way to each have our own place next to each other or on the same property, instead of one actual house that we share. Other than not living together, we are together. It's no different than any other couple that's dating but doesn't live together. Well, it's a little different since we share kids, and we were once married, and I still usually refer to him as my husband, but not too different. We aren't keeping our relationship a secret anymore, so we aren't pretending to not be together. Everyone knows now. We spend a lot of time together. But yeah, he may eventually want more than I do, as in a relationship where we live together 24/7. At this point, the hubby's ex-GF was firmly in the rearview mirror, and OP was still brushing it off as if it is no biggie, but I found one exchange that people may find interesting. OP, downvoted. Yes, he had a girlfriend at the time. It's in my post history and I'm not trying to hide it, but we have moved well beyond that now. Response. People are downvoting her comment because it is pretty black and white when it comes to cheating. Cheating hurts others, and a lot of people value living in a world and having actions that don't result in hurting others. He was in a relationship and committed to his girlfriend when he decided that he had the right to sleep with his ex and not immediately tell her that he did it. She deserved better than to get trauma from someone who claimed to be committed to her, but was willing to step out on her. Cheating on someone does result in emotional trauma, which will affect how they will view love and relationships going forward. Personally, if he wasn't ready to be in a relationship with her, then he should have left her alone. I am tired of men in particular getting into relationships with women when they know they are not clearly over their ex-partner. It is a sign of selfishness and pure disregard of another human being's health. She was used as an emotional support and sex object by him, because no one that respects their partner would do something this cruel. So I'm not going to cheer on someone who could have just avoided this entire situation by not being in a relationship when he was clearly not ready to be in one, and hurt someone deeply. Edit, I want to add additional thought as well. Cheating is not only an emotional hurt but a sign that you give zero care about your partner's health. He was presumably still having sex with his ex-girlfriend after sleeping with no condoms with his ex-wife. With the rate of sexually transmitted diseases and infections increasing and the likelihood of the disease being antibiotic resistant, he told his ex that he had zero care for health and emotional well-being. She had the basic right to know that he slept with another person while still being intimate with her, especially with no form of protection. Not calling the ex-wife dirty, but with the risk of catching a disease that's incurable, or opens you up to higher risk of illness. Every person who is engaging in a sexual relationship deserves honesty. OP. All of this may be true. I'm not arguing anything you said. But I'd like to know what everyone on Reddit thinks we're supposed to do about it. We can't go back in time and undo what we did. Maybe Redditors feel that as an act of penance we should not be together, despite very much wanting to, since that's what we deserve for hurting her in the process. We should never be allowed to move on and have any happiness in our lives, together or separate, because we did something at one time that hurt somebody. Short of publicly flogging ourselves and maybe not allowing ourselves to ever be in a relationship with anyone ever again as a form of self-punishment, what are we supposed to do to satisfy the masses? Neither of us are proud of hurting somebody. My stepsister stole my fiancé and taunted me with postcards. Now they're broke and begging for a job at our family business. I, 28F, was engaged to my college boyfriend about 4 years ago. We had been together throughout college and got engaged at 23. A week before our wedding, he ran off with my stepsister. My ex-fiancé Greg, 28M, and my stepsister Melissa, 28F, eloped just before our big day, leaving only a letter behind. In the letter, Greg admitted to starting an affair with Melissa a few months after our engagement. He said he realized he couldn't marry me because it would be unfair to all of us, as he and Melissa were the ones truly in love. He believed the universe used me to bring him to his true love, and marrying me would deny us all a happy future. And that was it. They left, and I didn't see them again until recently. Greg's parents were so embarrassed by his actions that they covered all the wedding costs, so I didn't have to pay anything. That was the last time I interacted with his family. My own family was beyond embarrassed. They were furious. My father even considered hiring a private detective to track them down and bring them back for answers. Just to let you know, my father is actually my stepdad, but he has been my father ever since I was very young, and I have always called him dad because he is the only father I've ever known. My biological dad left shortly after I was born, and my mom never saw him again since he gave up his parental rights, and they were never married. My mom married my dad when I was 8. Melissa and I went to the same school, which is how our parents met. For some reason, Melissa took a dislike to me and treated me terribly for years. She was a true bully, constantly picking on me at school with her friends. The torment didn't stop at home. She would find ways to make me feel bad there too. Despite my complaints, our parents' attempts to discipline her weren't effective and she wasn't afraid of them, so she continued her bullying. My school years were a nightmare because of her and her friends. Much like my dad was absent, Melissa's mom wasn't around either, as she had passed away a few years after Melissa was born. Her mother died in the middle of the night from an epileptic episode, so whenever my mom tried to discipline her, Melissa would retort that she had no right because she wasn't her real mom. My father attempted to stop her bullying, but it was futile as she was fearless. They tried everything from scolding to gentle talks, but nothing curbed her behavior. Occasionally, they threatened to send her away, but she would boldly challenge them, knowing they were empty threats. In middle school, she was already troublesome, but by high school, her behavior worsened significantly. She picked up bad habits, becoming almost a juvenile delinquent. She started smoking and sneaking out to drink with her equally problematic friends. The turning point came when she was arrested with her friends one night for breaking into a house while drunk. This incident finally pushed our parents to take action. After weeks of pleading and protesting, they managed to send her to a rehabilitation center for troubled teens. Though she was unhappy, my father was adamant, insisting that if she wanted to stay with us and be part of the family, she had to improve. He couldn't allow her behavior to continue and disrupt everyone else as she was becoming a menace to society. Melissa left during our sophomore year and didn't return until after we had graduated. She enrolled in a school near the rehab center and stayed with her aunt. I didn't see her during those years because I had no interest in how my biggest bully was doing. My parents visited her every weekend and always asked if I wanted to join, but I always said no. Her friends ignored me after she left, which greatly improved my high school experience as I no longer had anyone constantly bullying me. Melissa continued her education in rehab and, when she returned, the first thing she did was apologize for everything she had put me through. She seemed much calmer, and I thought she had genuinely changed, so I forgave her. We were both heading off to college in a few months anyway, so it didn't seem to matter much. Once college started, we both moved out and only came back home for the holidays. During those times, she was much nicer to me, not in the sense of being friendly, but she simply ignored me instead of constantly picking on me as she used to. I had no reason to suspect anything even after getting engaged. They both acted as if nothing was happening. I never thought Greg might have feelings for Melissa. It never crossed my mind because Greg convincingly acted like he was in love with me, all while cheating on me with Melissa. She also pretended to be my friend, so I didn't find out the truth until it was too late and they had already left. My parents wanted to track them down and bring them back, but I convinced them to let it go because I just wanted to forget everything. It was already devastating that Greg and Melissa made a fool of me by running off a week before my wedding. I couldn't handle any more drama. I was deeply depressed and emotionally drained. For weeks, I buried myself in work and sleep to avoid confronting my heartbreak. My heart was shattered and I felt numb, but worse was yet to come. A couple of weeks after the day that should have been my wedding, I received a postcard from Melissa. She was in California and included a bunch of photos of her and Greg looking incredibly happy. It was clear she was rubbing it in my face. She mentioned being sorry about the surprise before my wedding, but it was obvious she wasn't truly sorry. She just wanted to hurt me. That's when I realized she had never forgiven me for what happened years ago and blamed me for being sent away. She never wanted to be my friend. She used me to get to Greg. I had trusted her and ended up being a stepping stone in her malicious plan. I have to admit, for days after receiving that postcard, I couldn't sleep because I was losing my mind over it. It was a traumatic experience, and I needed months of therapy to heal and address my trust issues. The postcard wasn't a one-time thing. She sent me pictures of her and Greg for months. It only stopped after about a year because I never responded or engaged with her drama. Our parents were furious and cut all ties with her after the first postcard. They never reached out to her again, which was a significant loss for Melissa because she was poised to inherit her dad's business. She was a business major, partly because she wanted to join our father's company. However, after her betrayal, Our father severed all ties with her and offered me the opportunity to work with him instead, feeling he needed to make amends in a significant way. Unlike her, I had a degree in history, which had nothing to do with business. Therefore, I needed to learn the ropes from scratch. My father assured me this wasn't an issue and was eager to teach me everything he knew so I could eventually take over the business. I agreed and started working under him to learn how to run the business, allowing him to retire and hand over the reins to me. After a few years of hard work, I was promoted last year, and my father retired. It was a fantastic feeling, having started from the bottom and learned everything I needed to know. Now, the business runs smoothly under my management, and my parents can enjoy their time together without worrying about it, thanks to my efforts. For a long time, I immersed myself in my work, which helped me move on from Greg. The combination of work and therapy allowed me to heal, and I no longer think about Greg or what he did. I never expected to hear from them again, let alone have them ask for my help. It would take a lot of nerve and a serious lack of common sense to ask for my help after betraying me, humiliating me and flaunting it. Yet Melissa and Greg must indeed lack sense, because that's exactly what they did a few days ago. It was the weekend, and around lunchtime, my doorbell rang frantically. Thinking it was the pizza I ordered, I didn't think much of it. To my shock, when I opened the door, instead of the delivery guy, there stood Melissa, looking extremely worried. Speechless, I waited for her to speak. It was clear she was there to ask for help. She looked destitute and her appearance betrayed her situation. Melissa, always impeccably dressed, now wore old faded clothes that looked long out of date. Her jeans were too short, and she appeared malnourished. I had already decided that whatever she asked, my answer would be no. She explained that she and Greg had been struggling ever since he lost his job a few months ago. Instead of job hunting, he had taken to drinking. Although she had been trying to find a job, her efforts were unsuccessful because she had left the workforce to handle household chores when she moved away with Greg. This gap in her resume made her a less attractive candidate for the job she applied for. She had heard from relatives that our father had retired and handed the business over to me, so she came to ask if I would hire Greg. Melissa admitted she hadn't approached our parents yet and came straight to me because she believed I had a kind heart and felt immense guilt over her past betrayal, confident I wouldn't turn her away. Now that she needed my help, her entitlement was so absurd that I laughed in her face and told her to apply elsewhere because I don't hire cheaters. Then I shut the door on her and walked back to the living room, ready to call the cops if she didn't leave soon. Fortunately, she left that day, but she hasn't stopped bothering me. After her visit, I called our parents to tell them about it. They said they'd heard from neighbors that Melissa was back in town without Greg but hadn't mentioned it. In our small town, news travels fast, so we quickly found out that Melissa had been in town for about a week, staying with an old high school friend. It was likely this friend who told her where I lived and that I had inherited the business she thought should have been hers. She was now really playing that card. A few days after visiting me, she went to our parents to complain about how heartless I was. She expected them to side with her, thinking she had the upper hand by playing the victim, but she was wrong. My father told her that the business was mine to run and I could make my own decisions. He wasn't going to interfere. My mother reminded her that she had betrayed me by running away with my fiancé after pretending to be my friend for years, so she deserved whatever was happening to her. Melissa had lost the right to ask any of us for help, especially after sending me postcards to torment me. She tried to defend herself, saying it was all in the past and she was a different person now, but my parents told her to leave, wanting nothing to do with her anymore. She threw a tantrum, accusing them of always favoring me and treating me like the golden child while ignoring her. My father responded that he had made more allowances for her behavior than any other parent would, but she insisted it still didn't matter. I had everything she was supposed to have, including the business I was flaunting. She claimed it wasn't her fault that Greg fell for her and chose her over me, yet she felt she was being punished for it. She said the postcards she sent were sincere apologies, not attempts to torment me. Honestly, I haven't stopped thinking about her words since my father told me. It's true she was supposed to inherit the business and be in my position, but she lost that because of her own actions, not mine. I never asked my father to cut her out and give me the business, he did that on his own. It seems unfair for her to blame me. She also accused me of being the golden child, which isn't true, but I can see why she thinks that. She believes she was sent away because I complained about her bullying. It's a big deal for a parent to decide to send their child away, and I know it was hard on my father. But again, that's not my fault. If he hadn't intervened, Melissa might have ended up in even more trouble because of the path she was on. I also doubt her claim about the postcards being genuine apologies. She was probably just trying to cover up her intentions. I feel sorry for her because her husband turned out to be completely useless, and now she has to bail him out. She even came to me for help, which must have been incredibly hard for her. I regret how I treated her before. I have everything now, and she has nothing, so I can't help but pity her. That's just who I am. Besides, it's been a long time, and I'm tired of holding on to this grudge. But I also don't want to help her. I can offer my sympathy, but I don't want to hire them or give them money. I think it's enough that I even feel bad for her after everything she put me through, which most people wouldn't do. The only reason I feel bad for her now is that this business was supposed to be hers. Now that I'm in a position of power, I'm finally getting back at her. And it feels wrong. Maybe it's because of what she said about me being the golden child, or maybe it's just imposter syndrome, but I feel weird about this. So am I the AH for refusing to hire my ex-fiancé, who eloped with my stepsister, now that they're struggling with money and need help? Update. I was at a loss and the comments here only made things more confusing. Some of you thought I was right to turn them away, while others claimed I was always the favored child, causing Melissa to act out. This wasn't as helpful as I hoped. I decided to talk to my parents, as I've always sought their advice when facing problems. They assured me I had no reason to feel sorry for Melissa. They said everyone had gone above and beyond to help her become a better person, but if she wasn't willing to change, there was little we could do. My father mentioned he had intended to let her take over the business if she had behaved and been a good daughter, but she failed and embarrassed the family. Given that, she couldn't expect to take over or even be part of the family anymore. Talking to my parents made me feel much better. So, I'll try not to feel guilty about things I haven't done anymore. Update. About a week had passed since Melissa had shown up at my door and visited my parents. We hadn't heard from her, and I almost thought she had gone back to Greg until today when she appeared at my workplace and caused a scene. It was terrible because she just walked in, knowing the place well from childhood, and easily bypassed security. She stood in front of my office, shouting that I had stolen the business from her by pretending to be a perfect daughter to our parents and constantly sucking up to them to gain their approval. She accused me of falsely claiming she had bullied me throughout our childhood and convincing our father to send her to rehab just to solidify my position as the favored child. She declared that the business was supposed to be hers, but I was refusing to let her be a part of it because I was jealous Greg had chosen her over me, unlike our parents who had always favored me. She said I had lost my mind from being overlooked and had turned our parents against her. When I heard the commotion, I called security and went to see what was happening. I tried to tell her to shut up, but she continued for a few more minutes until security finally threw her out of the building. I called my dad before contacting the police to get his opinion, and he was furious. He told me to go ahead and call the cops. Luckily, when the police arrived, she was still lurking nearby, likely waiting for me to leave so she could confront me again or maybe even physically attack me. The police took her away and charged her with trespassing and disturbing the peace. They are minor charges, and she might get off with a fine or community service at worst, but it will go on her record, which is never good. I informed my dad about the charges and arrest, expecting him to be upset, but he just seemed exasperated and said he was tired of dealing with her craziness. I feel bad for him because it must be hard having a daughter like Melissa and being blamed for everything that goes wrong in her life, even though it's usually her own fault. Honestly, we have all been really patient. Update. So I think Melissa has gone back to California because we haven't heard from her in a few days, which is unusual since we expected her to lash out after her arrest. My dad asked around and found out that some people saw her heading towards the airport recently, so it seems she's left. Honestly, it's a huge relief that she's gone because I was really worried she might do something drastic to get our attention, which is never good. I have no idea what she plans to do about the situation with Greg now, as it seems unlikely she'll get help from anyone after this. I just hope she finds something to do and gets out of this mess, not out of kindness or compassion, but because if she doesn't, she'll just come back here with Greg and bother us again, and I don't want that. So I genuinely hope and pray that either she or Greg finds a job and can support themselves. For now at least, I won't have to hear from her for a couple of weeks, and I believe this nightmare is finally over.